What's up, party people, and welcome to Countdown to Classic. This is a podcast that educates, informs, and gossips about World of Warcraft Classic. Each week, we discuss the news, hot button issues, and content of the highly anticipated Classic servers. I'm your host, Josh Corbett, and this is a show where it's not my opinion on World of Warcraft that counts, but yours. If you're new to the show, Countdown to Classic goes through your expert input on everything relating to the upcoming release of World of Warcraft Classic. Now, I had to take a week off in putting this episode together. It took a bit longer than usual just due to a lot of IRL stuff coming up this week, mainly being my epic 3-day Super Bowl hangover, but as I mentioned at the tail end of last year, the podcast is very much so in a when it's ready publication model. Now, just to ensure that the quality stays the same. Obviously, I'm still aiming for that once a week turnaround when I can, but I didn't want to rush this one out and possibly hurl while delivering this opening. But this one will be worth the wait, as I've got a fantastic call lined up for you with some of Countdown's favorite guests in Defcamp, Melderon and Orcbit, as the guys sit down and chat with me about everything and anything Scarlet Monastery over about 90 minutes. After that, we'll turn to one more listener call on Enhancement Shaman and a quick forum and fauna about the 4 Horsemen, and then we'll hear some more listener stories in Memory Lane. Now, you all know the drill by now. This is a community-based podcast, so if you like what you're hearing, join the Discord and keep the conversations going with us all over there. Follow the show on social media and also email me at feedback@countdowntoclassic.com if you would like to call into the show or make a suggestion or just say hi. Everything you'll need is in the show notes for each episode. Now let's get into it with Calling Countdown. All right, it's time for another Countdown to Classic call. And we've got 3 lunatics on the line that I've been trying to wrangle together like a herd of cats. And we've got the boys, everyone, Orcbit, Defcamp, Melderon. Let's start with Melderon. Say hello.
Hello, everyone. Very, very happy to be here.
Defcamp, go for it.
Hello!
Defcamp's been doing his impressions of all of us one by one, which he, as he says, one day we're going to have an impression off, and I think it's
not my opinion that matters, it's yours.
And Orcbit, say good day, mate.
Orcbit here.
Zuck, zuck.
There he is. All right, now.
Hey, guys.
There's 2 good reasons for this motley crew being put together today. The first is that everyone has luckily agreed to come on and chat extensively about one of the more beloved instances in the game, being Scarlet Monastery. And a lot of you will remember I've covered the lore of Scarlet Monastery all the way back, when the show was still in single digits. So it's been a long time since we've said anything about Scarlet Monastery, but this episode isn't going to be about the lore. It's going to be about us tackling the dungeon as players. And it's not going to be a guide. It's just going to be us reminiscing about the dungeon, talking about bits we love, bits we didn't love, and little knickknacks that we found in there and some fun stories that we've had during instance runs with other people. But then the second part of the reason that you guys are all here is I really loved our last call together. It was, one of my very, very fond memories. Now, sorry, I might be a bit remiss though, because I think, was Melderon not there? Am I getting that right?
Defcamp wasn't there. It was the Shaman.
That's
Shaman.
right.
Oh, right.
Yes. It feels like he was, just because we had such a good time. But
you guys talked about me. I heard all about
that. It felt like he was, because we kept talking about his dick half the time.
Yeah.
It's all right. I was there in spirit. That's right.
All right. Well, look, now
talked about his private parts, but that's okay.
Yeah. Exactly. No, that's what I'm saying. His dick got a random shout out, as you know, it should get.
Very short topic though.
As it should get a very short shout out for particular reasons.
It's still like a whisper in the dark.
I think it was about
Leave my totem alone, all right?
it was about a 3.5 second shout out. I think it was.
Yeah, about 3.5 seconds. Yeah.
Hey, all right. Leave my little love nugget out of this, okay?
Now, I'm so glad that all of you are here now because, as we said, we were missing Defcamp last time, and now we've got the sort of the full band together. So, guys, let's have a laugh. Let's have a chat. We're talking about Scarlet Monastery, and what I'll do is, and as you guys know, anyone jump in at any stage. There's no rules here. I'll just try and direct traffic a little bit as best as I can. But like I said, it might be a little bit like herding cats at certain points. But let's start off with just generally this instance. Now, I love Scarlet Monastery. I think it's, I don't think it's a bit of a stretch to say this is one of the more beloved instances in the game. When I say one of the more beloved, I mean like top 5.
Absolutely. I would say
I'd say
three.
top 5.
Top 3. Some amazing gear as well that drops there.
Oh, yeah.
Very, very, very amazing gear. Whether you're Shaman, whether you're Clothy, or Yep. My
Shaman and
priest
warriors
gets,
fighting over all the Herod gear. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, we'll get to that for sure. Where would you go? I'll start with you, Melderon. Where would you put it in your sort of rankings?
Oh man, it's tough. I'd say it's probably 2 or 3. Yeah, as you know, if you haven't seen our SFK video, SFK is my favorite, but I'd say that SM is probably 2 or 3, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, are we considering all of them one dungeon? I guess that's the question. Right?
I think so. I think we lump it in together.
Yeah.
What
For
about
the sake of, like, let's just call it one dungeon.
Yeah.
Graveyard is not going to hold up on its own.
No, exactly. Where would you put it in your rankings, Orcbit? Where is it on the list for you?
Are we talking purely like leveling dungeons?
Yeah, okay, let's do that. Let's keep raids out of it.
Yeah, because it's not really fair comparing to a raid, is it?
No, you can't compare it to raids,
No.
I would say like definitely top 3, if not the best, just because it's so many dungeons in one. I mean, you go there as a healer or as a DPS or whatever. You go there as, you have quests, you have cloth, you have all this great stuff.
Amazing lore.
Like a fun dungeon. And I am sad that I've never gotten to experience like the final chapter, if you want to call it that, where you walk in with an Ashbringer. I mean, I've done it on my own private server, but that's not really cool.
Yeah.
I mean, that was like back in the day when I saw that on whatever Google videos or whatever it was. It's just like insane how a dungeon, like I just knew the dungeon as a leveling dungeon, and then all of a sudden you see this RP event. I've never seen an RP event like that just act out because of an item. Like there's nothing in the game that's gonna do that.
Nothing. Yeah.
So I mean, it has a certain place in my heart for like a leveling dungeon, but also like just the sheer fact that that there's something in there. If you go in there with a Nax epic, something's going to happen. I mean, I like the fact that that's in the game.
Definitely ahead of the curve in terms of design. The fact that the devs, came back. It's one of the, we talk about callbacks in comedy. That's one of the great callbacks of all time, to go back to this low level dungeon with that item. And as you say, something happens. But now, Orcbit, can I just double check? You said, the quests and the cloth. Is it what some come for the quests, but I stay for the cloth? Is that how it is for you?
Nah, I mean, obviously all classes, they can benefit from the quests. If doing quests or not while leveling is the thing to do, is up to how people want to level. Like, do you want to just go for the grind and get to max ASAP? Personally, I like doing the dungeons. I like doing PvP. I like, feeling the various stages of my class before 60 instead of just, doing it what you do in WoW at 60. I like the whole thing. And Scarlet Monastery is like one of the first, like, I feel like major instances. Like you have stuff like Wailing Caverns, which is basically just a hole in the ground with water in it, right? Now you have, you have the Scarlets, like the fucking soldiers and everything. Like you start seeing like, oh, there's gotta be some lore behind this. There's gotta be some, motive. Why are these humans not, alliance with the other humans? Like what's going on?
Yep. Why are the alliance coming here too? Yeah.
Yeah. So you start to think and, it's just, I don't know. It's a great fucking instance. You have great melee fights. You have great ranged fights. I mean, the library with, whatever the mage is called.
Arcanist,
Arcanist.
Yeah. You have to go out of range for the AoE. It's kind of like Shade of Iran from TBC, just very, very, very basic version, right? So you have all these kind of things. You have the whirlwind from Herald,
Herod's,
and the rest event, like the RP rest event in Cathedral. I mean, oh my God, first time I was like, wow, what's going on? Why can't I move? Oh, she's resting him.
Yeah.
Oh my God, we have to do it again.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
it's like, oh dude, yeah.
Yeah.
So good. You're absolutely right,
the first time I did that, I'm like, wait a minute, we gotta kill her again. I went, because I think I was feeling it. I gotta kill her again? Are you kidding me?
And think about this. The fact that it's in a starting zone, right? So like, when you're undead and you're starting off and I ran too close to there. My first character was Forsaken. I ran too close to there and got like immediately one hit. And I'm like, what the hell just happened? Like, it's just, and then you see Alliance people running around, and it's
PvP that happens outside of there. Yeah, I actually killed Cargos the other day there, and he was going there to do it on his paladin, and I was on my priest, and I just kept on killing him. I had no idea it was him, but I gotta defend my land. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But SM for me, like I was gonna say, it's definitely my top three. My top three are BRD, SFK, and SM. And for me, it has that classical element that Melderon talked about when we did that SFK video. Has that classical element that you have the bad guys at the end. You have this amazing monastery castle like structure. Where there's guards. There's these really cool bosses. The loot that you get there as well. Like a lot of the loot that I got there when I play a priest, like the Hand of Righteous, White Man's Chapeau. Those are things that I had until I was level, and you get them when you're like level 40-ish. It's just such, for me, when I was leveling, doing SM over and over again was one of my best experiences while leveling. A lot of people say, don't do dungeons if you want to, just level and, do your quests and you'll level quicker. No. Do yourself a favor, play the game, do the dungeons, do SM. It has amazing lore behind it. It has amazing drops. It has amazing mechanics. Not only that, but you get something so badass, which is also the Scarlet Tavern. Can we talk about that for a second?
Oh my God.
If you're lucky to get it.
If you're lucky.
I got it my first time. First time I ever did it. I got it my first time. I am so lucky when it comes to shit like that. I also got the Cara Midnight on my first run as well. So yeah, I've been really.
The Attunement?
Yeah, Attunement's Mount. Yeah,
I need you in my raid, dude. I need you to bring your.
All my luck's gone now. I used it all up. It's all gone. But
it's funny you say that with the 60 thing though. Like you were wearing the stuff when you were 60.
Yep.
Same. I mean, back then I had an Enhancement Shaman. I was wearing the shoulders at 60.
Yeah.
And people in Western Gold would whisper me like, "Did you get hacked?"
That's hysterical.
It's so funny, but and
they're badass looking shoulders too.
Oh, they are. Oh, they're so good.
It only covers the one shoulder. Yeah, it's really cool. Yeah,
and you get like your first male piece if you're Shaman, right? Because you get the or if you'll have like level 40, you can wear mail. And being a healer, like Hand of Righteousness, is the best thing you can get until Hand of Grace, really.
Which has its own amount of controversy when you're not 40 yet and you want to roll on the stuff the warrior wants. And you're like, I can't really use it, but in 2 levels I can. Can I need?
Yeah.
Oh, we'll talk.
I've seen so many arguments over. Anyway, yeah.
We can talk about that for sure. I definitely want to cover some of those loot arguments, definitely. But Melderon, you raised a really good point that I hadn't even considered, and I was just having a quick look on my phone here while you guys were chatting amongst yourselves about the instance being in the starting zone. And even though like it's stupid because you go, I know it's in a starting zone, but it doesn't really click where I go, holy shit, this is like a mid-level instance in a fucking starting zone. And I mean, please, someone shout me down if I'm wrong, but is this the only instance of such a great level disparity of instance versus zone? Because
the only one I can think of is the Stockades, but that's in a city and it's like guarded and you can't.
Does Nomergon qualify?
Yeah, Nomergon.
Nomergon. Yeah,
level 30-ish.
Good point. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's kind of the same, but it's not out in the open like this. I mean,
and plus Nomergon's
you could walk around as a level 10, Forsaken, right? And get killed by these guys. I think if you have to go inside Nomergon to get killed, right?
Because the guys outside aren't elite.
But they are high level and they will hit hard. Yeah.
No, they're not. They're part of a quest.
The guys outside of
Nomer are like level 10.
Oh, and I meant actually outside of the instance, like the instance entrance.
Oh, no, I'm talking about like the entrance to Numerigan. They're only like level 10.
Okay,
level 10. But the entrance of SM, they're like 25, 26.
Yeah,
elites.
And they're elites.
And they're elites. Right, exactly. So no, there is no. I think there's nothing that compares to it.
As Orcbit says, and as you guys have alluded to, like, you know, you can just be pottering along as a little level 8, 9, 10 or whatever, doing your own thing. And because I haven't played on a PvP server, I haven't experienced this yet. Although, I mean, on the server I'm playing on at the moment, I might be experiencing it soon. In that, you know, from two different angles here, I can be leveling up and then just get ganked by someone who's bored on his way to SM, or I can be the person on his way to SM and be like, hey, I'm going to take this guy out who's thinking he's, you know, going to have a good time questing.
Well, if they're
you can't.
if they're dumb enough to flag
you have to flag yourself because you're in a starting zone, so you're not automatically. So
it's not contested territory, right?
On PvP servers.
Yeah.
On PvP servers,
I never knew that. Really? So starting zones are omitted.
It's horde territory, so it's considered that the alliance can't attack you, but you can attack them.
You would have to
flag yourself. Yeah.
Another thing you have to consider, if you attack them, you're flagged automatically, correct? Yeah. Because another thing you have to consider is that there's a quest chain in the Forsaken in Tearsfall called At War with the Scarlet Crusade that tasks you with killing Scarlet Crusade. You know, it's a chain. You keep killing higher level. And the funny thing is, two of the quests have you kill guys right near SM.
Right,
so if you're a new player, you might think that's one of your quests guys to kill, and you attack them, and it's like a level 30 elite. So that actually
happened to me,
and they look exactly the same.
My first time on Defcamp, when I made my priest, I strayed too close to SM, and I'm like, oh, you know, I got to do the quest, kill these guys. Oh my god, what's this? A level skull elite? Oh my god! And then it has an element though that is like mysterious. You know what I mean? Which I love about classic WoW, which you really don't get in later, in later expansions. It's that mystery quality. Like when I was leveling through, you know, my first time on a horde character, I had no idea that, you know, like, of course I did SM on my rogue, but I didn't know I was like so close to it. I'm like, oh my god, I pulled them from over there, and it has the element of like, wow, this is something that's here for later level. I'll experience it later. You know, I can come back here when I'm at level 30, whatever. And,
because if you're level 10 and they're skull, right? You don't know.
They're skull, exactly.
Yeah, you're just like, oh shit, they're higher level than me.
But the one thing I really love about SM, it almost has its own attunement in a way with the key system. So you have to do the lower level, with library, you have to get the key.
It's the first key dungeon.
Yeah, it's the first key dungeon that you experience as a player, and it's really cool because you can't just go in and do Cathedral. You have to experience the story of the Scarlet Monastery by doing. I mean, you don't have to do great. But, you know, it is really awesome to do it in the order and you experience it. And I love doing groups who go there and they do the whole dungeon. They do graveyard, they do library, they do armory, then cathedral. Like I love doing that because you really feel like you just stormed this monastery and, you know, and then killing.
There's a better chance that people get away with gear as well if you do them all.
Exactly.
Some of them are more caster and some of them are more.
And you can knock at all your quests too because there's quests for everyone. You know.
Now, I mean, obviously, you guys are doing so amazingly well, and it's very clear now why Defcamp it does his Josh impression, where he, as I said, it's not my opinion that matters, it's yours, because I'm the dickhead that says things like, what do you mean you can't kill people in starting zones? I didn't know about flagging, all that jazz. That's why the experts are here. But look, guys, we're going to go through it sort of, you know, area by area, and that's a great sort of opening statement on why we love the Scarlet Monastery. But let's kick off with the graveyard that we just sort of started talking about, and we're going to go through each area and each boss and talk about, you know, maybe memorable times that you've taken them down, or the loot, or, you know, just fun things about the zone. But I'll kick us off with the graveyard by saying this. Now, tell me if this is an overly controversial statement, but the graveyard is probably my favorite area of Scarlet Monastery. And there's a bit of a funny reason behind that though, and it's not actually vanilla related. I have a lot of fond memories of the Headless Horsemen. And so a lot of my good feelings about the graveyard are tied to that. So I go in there and I have a lot of, you know, nostalgia wash over me and blah, 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 and go, I remember this because the Headless Horseman is still one of my favorite things. But I love the look of the graveyard. I don't know, I'm weird. I like outdoor instances. So, you know, the feeling that you're outside, but you're in an instance is really cool to me. But let's talk about the graveyard in general. Who wants to start off? What do you think about it?
It's pretty cool. I like the rare spawn stuff. That's the only reason I really go in there, because if the rare spawns are up, they drop some insane loot. Also, there's so the first guy, the interrogator, he's pretty cool. You walk in there and he has a very custom message. He's like, something like, tell me all your secrets or something. He says it's like a custom message or a custom, and he comes out, you kill him, and then he drops a ring. No, you kill him. Then there's a guy there's a Forsaken that's being interrogated or what's the word I'm looking for? Tortured. And he gives you a quest. So that's pretty cool. But I always love the graveyard because like there's always a chance of those rare spawns coming up.
Yep. And I like the fact that you're killing, like, you go outside in the courtyard, you're killing the ghosts, and it's kind of a lot different. And then you go down. And so if you remember, a lot of people are probably remembering Graveyard was actually changed, I think, more than any of the other ones, right? Later in cap. When you go out into that court, you go down into that tomb, you have to go all the way down, and it's kind of like that tomb up in the other side of Tearsful. What's it called?
The Gammon Mills.
The Gammon Mills. It's like that, but it's really dangerous. If you go down there and just run down there, like, you're going to wipe because you're going to pull everything down there. But, with the Gammon Mills, I love that going down in the crypt kind of feel. And you got the idea of like, okay, this is the graveyard, you're killing ghosts, that kind of thing. And I think it's a really good intro in the Scarlet Monastery. Yeah. It's definitely the shortest, I think, of all of them as well.
Definitely, yeah.
It definitely feels that way. Yeah, like I said, I think it's a good introduction to the Scarlet Monastery, into the adventure of it,
The whole thing, absolutely. I mean, the other random reason why, and it goes against the whole fucking theme of the instance, the other random reason I love the graveyard so much is I really love taking down undead mobs. That's why I have such a gravitation towards like Duskwood and areas like that. But it's stupid because the whole point of Scarlet Monastery is you're there for these religious zealots being the Scarlet Crusade, and it's supposed to be a human-based instance, yet I like the one little quarter of it where there's not so many humans, you know what I mean? So I'm just weird like that. Sense. But, Orcbit, I'll turn to you. We talked about the rare spawns, and please shout me down, guys, if any of these weren't in vanilla. As far as I know, they were. We've got Ashir, the Sleepless, the Fallen Champion, and Ironspine. Does that sound about right? Okay. And the bosses we've got, you mentioned the Interrogator Vishas and Blood Mage Thalnos. So turning to the bosses a little bit, and even if it's just the graveyard in general, Orcbit, any great memories of running this and taking down those bosses, or do you like it, or what do you think of the graveyard?
I think the last boss, the undead, whatever thing it is.
Blood Mage Thalnos?
I think that was, he does the Shadow Bolt, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
I think that was,
yep.
One of my first memories I have of like interrupting purpose.
That's good fun.
I mean, thinking back, I actually think that's like the first time.
You never forget your first.
Obviously now I can, I went to Valen Cabins last year and I interrupted, but I mean like way back doing the first playthrough, I think this was the first time I was like, oh, I can interrupt this. I'm going to do it. Huh.
So I've got a question for you. After your first time interrupting, did you all of a sudden smoke a cigarette and get very sleepy?
I didn't even get to that point. I just passed out in my chair. Like there was like ectoplasm everywhere. I don't know what.
You guys see that ghost? He just went by. Oh man!
But actually, coming back to what you said, Josh, about you liking the whole undead stuff and ghostly stuff, and it's weird because it's like human. I actually think it gives the whole thing that mystique, like, okay, these are not just normal humans because like there's a dreadlord involved and whatever, and it adds more to it, especially because it's the first one you go into. Like in the beginning you might, okay, I'm just like killing humans, and then you go in here and you see like undead and ghosts and whatnot, and you kind of like start to wonder if there's more to it than are these just pissed at the alliance, they're just gonna do their own thing, or so it kind of already opens up to, more stuff there.
Yeah.
Undeads and stuff. I think that's pretty cool. I think it's cool when it's just like streamlined. These are humans, go kill them because no reason whatsoever.
Graveyard definitely has a different feel, than the rest of them. I love the fact in Graveyard, you go out there, that big courtyard, because when you were doing like, say, Armory or Library, you start out, they all start out very similar with that little tunnel. There's a couple mobs. But then initially, then you go into the torture chamber. Library for me, I love it, but you have like this, like the books and all that, and the tunnel, and then Armory, you have that big, it's kind of like where they're practicing and they have all the, the barracks basically. But Graveyard, it has such that big open area. I think other than Cathedral, that's the other biggest open area that you have. And you really get this feeling that like you really feel like you're in a graveyard. And it does have that very Duskwood-esque kind of, but it's very different than the rest. I would say, SM, Lib, Armory, and Cathedral a lot more similar than Graveyard is. So it has its very own kind of.
Yeah, I mean, they're all humanoid based, and the only person or boss or whatever that's not human is the hidden Forsaken character in Cath, right? Mm-hmm. So you and the other ones, you just fight humans, and nothing special about it like that. I mean,
and dogs,
and lots of dogs. Yeah.
If you're lucky, you get the dog whistles and the gloves.
Yep. Yeah, release the hounds.
Now, just turning to the loot a little bit in this graveyard area, we've also obviously got Interrogator Vicious drops nothing terribly interesting unless you guys want to shout me down. The Torturing Poker, which is a dagger with fire damage, and the Bloody Brass Knuckles, which is a strength-based fist
weapon.
I think
it's good for tanking.
The poker?
The dagger.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but
right?
it would be
because as far as I remember, it's fast and it has.
That's right.
Like the spell damage.
Yeah, it's a 1.7 dagger.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, it would be good for a shaman. Good for shaman.
Oh, we really
leveling with the
really
hyperspec.
Good for shaman. Especially if you're doing flames on it. Yeah, it's really good.
Oh, of course. And then we've got Blood Mage.
That settled?
Yeah, sure. And then Blood Mage Thalnos, who drops probably a bit more interesting gear in the Orb of the Forgotten Seer and the great Blood Mage Mantle, the shoulders, which are pretty sweet at that stage.
Yes, they are.
I think those are the first shoulders with stat.
That you probably will be getting, maybe not.
SFK.
Yeah, I was going to say SFK has some blue shoulders, don't they, for casters?
Yeah.
Yep. But they're definitely some of the best ones you will be getting for that level. Probably have them for a while.
But that orb, I think the offhand has plus healing.
The offhand has plus
12
is it
spell
shadow
power.
And plus spell power?
Nice.
Okay, yeah. I thought it was just shadow. Wow. Was it just shadow?
No, just said, well, I've got increases spell power by 12.
Oh, okay. I thought
increases damage and healing about the 12. Yeah, he's right. He's right. I'm checking. Okay. Yep.
Yeah. You put that together with the Hand of Righteousness, you have yourself for healing or whatever. That's because
I didn't think about that.
Well, or you could just buy a plus healing offhand in the auction house.
Yeah, true. But who's going to do that? Come on.
Yeah.
On a fresh server.
Yeah. So that's some good gear right there. But the offhand was great. I'm thinking of a different offhand. I'm thinking of the skull one. That's I think that's from RFD or something like that. The shadow
damage one.
Yeah, the shadow damage one. But so that's some really good gear that you get from the last boss there.
And so, as you say, it doesn't take terribly long to tear through the graveyard. It's a nice little sort of, appetizer, if you will. Entree, what we call an entree in Australia, a starter meal. But then we get to the library. And, now, there's this, sorry, correct me if I'm wrong. You mentioned, obviously, talking about keys. This is the segment where the key comes into play.
Correct.
Yeah.
We get into the library, and this is, again, pushing my memory, because I haven't run Scarlet Monastery in a fucking long time. This is the segment where you effectively run the, like the athletic track that has like the circuit of human mobs around the, that patch of grass. Is that right?
Yeah, but you do that in both.
You do that in Armory as well,
and Cathedral.
All of them, and Cathedral, But this one has the dogs as well. So if you remember, like it has
the Houndmaster.
You walk in, it has the hounds, but there's also a lot of dogs as well. Like, so that there's
that's
mobs.
right. Yeah, there's also mobs with dogs, like hunter
they have
mobs.
Dogs as well, like hunter mobs, and they can be annoying. They hit pretty hard, the dogs, if I remember correctly. Being like a healer and getting hit, you got to make sure that the tank has aggro on them. So that's a really fun when you first walk in. First of all, nothing's better than first walking into any SM and seeing the stained glass windows on the side and the flag, the Scarlet Crusade flags hanging. Aesthetically, it is such a beautiful. I mean, it has, like I was saying, it has that core classical vibe where you're going into this, enchanted fortress, whether there's a castle or we were talking about, like when we talked about SFK, it has such a unique feeling though with the Scarlet Monastery, with the architecture, the feeling of it, and you can almost feel there's something about it where you can feel it has, like the library has that, the knowledge quality, the armory has that, it's like a barracks, but there's something about it where, I don't know if it's the blood red flags and all that. It almost feels like something here is evil. There's something there that's amiss. There's something that's going on, and you get that feeling from it. I don't know if you guys felt that too. I don't know if it's, it's
I think
different.
so.
Yeah. It's almost like you feel like there's something more going on there.
I think people say the same thing when they visit the Vatican. Yes.
I think so. Yes.
I'm Catholic. I'm allowed to say it.
Yes.
That's how it works.
And
you need to know that if you're part of a certain group, then you can say whatever you want. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All humans are trash.
Exactly. Trash.
There you go. Yeah.
Well,
something else mechanically that I want to just add real quick is that I think this is the first dungeon that I could be wrong about this, but this is the first dungeon where if your tank doesn't know how to line of sight properly, he or she will learn it very.
And you're going to need good CCs as well.
And CC as well, because a lot of the pulls in library and cathedral especially require like you to properly LOS, like run outside, aggro, then run back so the casters or the hunters follow you. And I think that's huge for this dungeon. Yeah. For all three of them.
Do you reckon this is the first dungeon that probably starts to employ a bit more CC or not so much?
I think you definitely do CC in other dungeons, but I was, cause you're dealing with so many humanoid mobs here, of course you're going to have, Polio is going to be absolutely amazing here.
Yeah.
Like you can get away with it a little bit more in earlier dungeons and like SFK, maybe a little bit less. SFK is a little bit rough. But I definitely feel like you're going to want a mage friend for doing SM. You're going to want at least one poly.
Yeah. Also, this is one of the first ones where you have like way more close corridors and stuff. You don't know what's around the other corner.
Yep.
All the others.
It's claustrophobic.
So inside.
Oh, dude.
Yeah. I mean, of course you have, tunnels and stuff, but they're kind of broad and you can, there's a lot of
those little rooms.
Yeah.
You remember in library they had those little cubby rooms off the side where there's like chests and stuff.
Oh my god!
Yeah,
and I remember someone's like, "Oh, it's chest. Let me just run in there and get it." No.
Or like the low level that you like needed graveyard, and like you're like, all right, let's bring him in the library, and he like gets too close to the opening of that thing and pulls the whole pulls the whole room. Yeah.
Yeah, I really would say that I sort of feel more claustrophobic here than I do in the first half of the Dead Mines.
Yeah, definitely.
I agree with that.
Especially in Lib. Graveyard's a little bit, especially once you get out, except for the crypt area, but especially when you're going through the library part, like the actual, where the libraries are, it gets very clustered there with the monks and all that. They're all on the side. If you go up a little too far, where there's like those columns, if you go past the column, you're going to pull somebody right there. And they run away as well. So you gotta, if humanoids, when they run away, you gotta make sure they're not gonna pull somebody else. So it's very, very, you have to make sure you pull
this is when the DPS really need to let the tank pull. This is like one of those dungeons where it's like, all right, DPS, you need to learn not to pull here. Like you'll wipe.
Yeah.
Or pull aggro because.
We had some fun before. We had some fun in earlier dungeons, but now fuck off.
Yeah. They do some real damage. Like they hurt,
Yeah.
Like, but what about the Houndmaster fight? Don't you guys love that?
Houndmaster Loxy.
Yeah. I have so many memories of telling people, all right, guys, kill skull, then X, then square, and sheep mood. Like, cause there's 4 dogs and the boss. So you have to definitely need to CC one of them. Have like a warlock. If you got a warlock and a mage, like have one feared, have one sheeped, kill skull, kill X, then kill the mob that's feared, then kill the sheep, then kill the boss. It's like,
that's funny. I have a lot of memories of saying, "Hey, Melderon, wait till I'm done drinking before you run in there and charge."
I don't do that. What are you talking about?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Now,
no, you're right. It is difficult for a low level.
Just before we get to sort of, Houndmaster Loxy's loot, as you said, this is the first kind of introduction to the Scarlet Crusade and the humans in there. You've run through the library. You've gotten a heavy dose of, all these mobs coming at you. What do you reckon of the Scarlet Crusade in general? To be honest, personally, I found it, I don't know, this is weird to say, a little bit boring after a time just to get what I felt was kind of like the same mob after the same mob coming after me. But I do enjoy the lore of the Scarlet Crusade as well.
Yeah, I love it as well. See, I love the story of Morgraine and, the betrayal that went on there. And, I love that story. I also love the fact that you don't really know at that point unless you're know about the lore that the monastery is, Scarlet Crusade is actually, they're being basically puppeted by the Dreadlord,
Balnazar.
Balnazar. Yeah, Balnazar.
The guy from the dungeon.
Yeah, exactly.
The guy from, Stratholme Live. Yeah.
Stratholme, yeah.
The
and he is
alchemy
basically,
recipe guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Him, yeah. He's basically,
The
you know,
guy.
the head of, pulling the strings, so to speak. And, you know, it's just really cool to know that, like, there's more going on here. That's what I meant about that feeling of, like, more going on than you really know that's going on, that you know, like, why are you killing these guys? They're supposed to be, you know, supposed to be reclaiming, you know, Tearsful from the undead, but they're a lot more than just, you know, your regular run-of-the-mill human. They will kill anyone who stands in their way from what they want to do. And, you know, Balnazar is corrupt them to the point where they are no longer righteous or honorable. They are basically murderers. And, you know, I just love the feeling of, like, you're killing this, and, you know, it almost feels like a cult or like a religious group that's just evil. And like this, like
the Westboro Baptist Church.
Yeah, something like that, where you're like,
Fuck
you
those
know,
people.
they're fighting in the name of religion and trying to be righteous, but you know that they've been corrupted. They're at the point where their beliefs have driven them to madness. So you have to basically put them out of their misery. So I feel like we're doing them, you know, we're doing the world a justice.
We're doing them a favor. We're doing them a favor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Especially as a priest, you know, I'm going in there, I'm like, you guys are betraying the light, and you gotta, you know, smite them.
I always enjoyed the story side of things, but like I said, it's just kind of like, I'm not trying to sort of be a bummer, but you know, comparing it against something like the Dead Mines, where I was like, we get a little bit, a tiny bit of variety there, where it's like, we're killing goblins, we're killing humans, and the bosses is like, here's a Tauren boss, here's a goblin on a giant sort of mech thing. And in the Scarlet Monastery, it's like human after human after human. I'm kind of like, all right.
I think you're just an Alliance fanboy, Joe.
I'm going to say something that's, I think I'm going to say something that's going to ruffle
Killing humans is never boring.
Go for it.
Exactly.
Ruffle some feathers.
I'm going to ruffle some feathers here.
Do it.
The Dead Mines is the most overrated Vanilla WoW dungeon.
Oh,
Boom.
yeah. That's a hot take.
Said it. Wow.
Now,
Why?
Just give us why.
I mean, the lore, though. The lore.
The Dead Mines lore?
The Dead Mines lore is pretty cool.
Yeah, they like help build
Yeah.
Stormwind or something, and then what was the whole thing? I forget.
Well, and then Nixia,
The nobles and Onyxia, and then she didn't want to pay because she's a greedy bitch. And
the
then,
1%,
you know, the Fire's brother.
The 1%
Yeah,
fucked over
true.
the 99%. That's how Van Cleef came to be.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Isn't this
he's
a
just the
fantasy?
union.
Isn't this a
It's like a
fantasy
union.
game?
Yeah,
I feel like that's
exactly.
something like we have to go over in like trade disputes, or I don't know. Like I don't know. It's just kind of corny. Like you
Yeah,
go
I
in there,
like the Dead
it's kind of
Mines.
kiddie too. I think you know the whole like what's the Goonies homage. You know, at
Yeah, but
the
that's
end.
cool though, man. I love the Goonies.
No,
The last,
yeah, it's
the
just-
last
it's
boss
one of the
is
first-
pretty difficult.
Plus, I bleed
Yeah,
red.
yeah.
I bleed red so much, and I just it's just,
But I gotta say, that dungeon is so easy to cheese if you stand on the top of the cannon. I don't know if it's gonna be like
Yeah.
that in Classic. But I actually enjoy the Dead Mines. I do, however, will say that it tends to be thrown out there a lot and is a little overrated. I would say that SFK, BRD, and SM are way better. I would put it around there for me, like with Alderman though, around that.
I think Alderman's way better.
I love Alderman, and I
And you have
I do
RP
again.
and Alderman.
Yeah, exactly. And
True.
you get to act like you're Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We always
the
wanted
whole,
to do.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly.
But I think we're getting
But
off
back
topic.
to
Sorry,
SM,
sorry,
yeah.
Josh.
No, that's all right. That's all right. I don't mind. I'm not so afraid of a tangent here and there. But I just wanted to look at. I'm looking at what how Master Loxy drops, and I wanted to ask you guys. You know, you see something sort of what I would describe as relatively kitschy in the dog whistle. Did any of you guys ever get it, and do you ever use it?
I did get it, and I really barely ever used it.
Yeah.
I never got it in Classic.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't get it in Classic either. It was later. Yeah.
Yeah, I think whenever it's dropped, people just read on it, and whoever gets it, they're like, "Oh yeah, I got a dog whistle." It's not like
I always went there for the tabard. That was my main, like, other than, like
the tabard's in Armory.
Yeah, but I'm saying for SM in total, like when like if there was a vanity thing that I wanted from SM, it was the tabard,
Looking for more SM run tabard reserved.
Yeah, there you go. They're gonna be like, screw you, dude.
Yeah. Now we've also got the dog training gloves, which are nice little leather hands, and
Yeah, they're pretty good for a rogue.
Yeah, and Loxy's training stick. Now I'm presuming this two-handed staff druids would be eyeing that one off.
So actually,
Warriors
I think
as well.
both it gives 60 attack power to fighting beasts only.
To beasts, yes.
So the dog training gloves and the Loxley training stick. So if you get both of those, that's plus 90 attack power to beasts. If you're a hunter, dude, that is some grinding potential right there.
Or a warrior.
Yeah, warrior, but the warrior as well. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
or
I'm saying, dude, warrior.
Or shaman.
Or shaman. Like, I really think that a lot of people look like stuff that says, oh, only while fighting beasts, and they kind of scoff. But think about how often you fight beasts, right? Just throw them in your bags, and when you fight beasts, equip it.
Stranglephone Veil, dude.
Exactly,
this is the 30s.
Dude.
Come on.
Moralis, like, there's a lot of really good places where you can use that. So, I actually love gear like that. It gives a little added bonus of like different stuff. You're not going to use it all the time. It's not going to be your go-to weapon, but whenever you're fighting beasts, hell yeah, put it on, make a beast set, if you have, outfitter. So yeah, I love that kind of stuff.
Now let's talk about Arcana Stone and Orcbit. You mentioned how you got to, God, that's a horrible pun I was about to say, you got a kick out of the interrupt being implemented in, Graveyard, and now I need to take a shower after such a bad pun. But
You're okay. I wasn't playing a rogue. There's still room for improvement, so it's okay.
Yeah, it's all right. Now, Arcana Stone, do you remember anything fun about this fight along those veins, or was it just not a particularly interesting fight, or anything fun that you remember about this encounter?
Yeah, I mean, definitely the moving out of the AoE. As I said, it instantly, in my mind, it's like, the new version of Shade of Iran from Carousel in TBC.
That is exactly where, like, Don't Stand in the Fire came from.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think we've been over this, like with the marking on the Houndskeeper and everything. Like, you kind of get introduced to some stuff here. I mean, you have to avoid shit, you have to LOS, you have to interrupt, you have to CC, and I'm not saying you can't get through the instance if you don't do it. Normal people, I would assume, like people who play video games, you will always, if you see something that, I can do it faster or better, or, it's more efficient, people tend to do that. And if you see that, it's more efficient to play well, then most people will play well. So I just think it's a real good instance to teach people this stuff, because it's not like crazy difference if you don't do it. I mean, you'll probably get through it with some wipes and stuff. But I mean, if you're going to do all four of them and you do it smoothly, it's going to make its impact on you as a player. Just as I said, like, if I think back the first time I think about like interrupting shit, I think about the Graveyard, right? So something happened for me when running Scarlet Monastery the first time. I got a new, you peel the onion, right? There's a new layer of the game you kind of discover. And I think it's a great place where that stuff happens.
Yeah.
And going back to your pun, you could have said it was shocking.
Oh, very good.
Oh, shocking. I like it.
I just want to add, I feel like the Arcanist is such a different from everything else you've experienced so far in WoW. If this is your first time doing it, in other dungeons, there are some AoE mechanics, but there's like 2 or 3 AoE mechanics in that fight. And if you're a melee, dude, like I remember doing that on my rogue and just getting destroyed.
Like he does
explosion,
keyboard turning, and don't know what.
Oh my god, dude! Like it is difficult, especially as a melee. That fight is hard. If you didn't know what to expect, and if you really don't encounter anything like that before. I mean, like I said, there are some AoE mechanics, and he does them a lot. Like he does the flame strike, whatever it is that comes out of him, the arcane explosion, and there's something else, right? I forget.
Silence, right?
Oh, he does the silence, and then he puts the bubble up. Yeah. So he puts so there's a lot of mechanics to that fight.
He's got silence detonation, arcane bubble, arcane missiles, and polymorph.
There you go. And I feel like it's a really great introduction, like you were saying, Orcbit, like to things that you're going to be seeing later on in the game. And it just kind of, WoW does a great, WoW's really good at getting you prepared for things that will be coming later. By implementing it in like the dungeons a little bit at a time. And I feel like this is one of those dungeons where they did a great job at saying, okay, you're getting higher level. Things are going to get a little bit more difficult. You have to watch out for different things now. It's not just a tank and spank. There's going to be some AoE damage. If you're a melee, you got to step out every once in a while. You're not just going to sit there and DPS them all the time. You got to do some other stuff. And I feel like, there are some other mechanics in lower level dungeons that are like that. But I feel like, especially with Arcanists, your really first introduction to especially as a melee, learning how to, come in and out of fights and learning some cool mechanics.
Well, just going over the loot for a second now. So he drops things like the Hypnotic Blade, Illusionary Rod, Mantle of Dawn, Robe of Dawn.
Oh, Hypnotic Blade.
Yeah, we'll go
So
for it.
good.
Talk about it, Orcbit.
Oof, one of my favorite weapons, like leveling up.
I mean, you basically needed to change pants when I said it.
I didn't even
Ectoplasm.
yeah, everywhere. Spooky ghosts. Seriously, it's a dagger, which, great for shamans.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a dagger. It's the first dagger I remember I got that has spell power on it.
Yep.
What
Yeah.
the fuck? And it has stats as well. I think it has intellect or something.
Yeah, 8 intellect,
Yeah,
3,
it's
8
a
intellect, 3 spirit,
1.4.
and 9 spell power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the good thing about having such a quick dagger, especially with spell power as a shaman when you're leveling, is you have flame tongue and you do insane amount of damage.
Yep.
Yep.
It's just so good if you and if you don't still good. I mean, it's just all over. As a healer, as
a shadow priest leveling
and
shadow, and you have that
shadow
offhand
priest.
from graveyard, and boom, right there.
Dope.
Yep. Oh, it is.
Yeah. And it's always better than, I think he drops the staff as well, but I don't think it gives spell power. And it's just so satisfying if you get like a dagger and like the mage doesn't get shit.
Oh yeah. I love
It's
that.
a dagger, right? You can have the staff. I don't
Yeah.
care.
Yeah, good luck finding a spell sword, you nub.
Yeah. So it's just that little feeling, I hate to say it, but we all know it's real. It feels good when you
Oh my
improve.
God, yeah.
And necessarily not everybody else. I mean, you like being, it always feels nice if you're better than people. It just is.
Another good, illusionary rod. That's the staff that, the illusionary rod.
Well, that's something I wanted to push you on there, and I'm glad you brought that up, Defcamp, because tell me why I'm so wrong on this one. I'm staring at that item with its 7 stamina, 15 intellect, and crit rating of 10, right? And I'm thinking, I just feel like for casters...
Wait, what?
Sorry, well, it says...
Well, those are the new stats, I think.
Oh, sorry. Now, I'm looking at a fucked up old website. Yeah, just please correct me whenever I say something weird, because I know that stuff is wrong on this website.
There's no crit rating in vanilla.
Yeah, forget that. Okay, so 7
every time
stamina.
you see that,
Sorry, every time you see what?
like every time you see something like rating, like crit rating.
Yep, that's
it's
Dragon
just
Crusade
crit.
onwards, basically, right?
You don't know it's the vanilla item. It's always 1%. It's the least
Yeah,
percent.
1%.
Right. Okay.
Or
So
more.
7 stamina, 15 intellect. And I'm just sort of thinking that I feel like there are other staffs or staves out there around that level that are relatively similar. Like, this doesn't feel terribly unique to me, or am I way off base?
It's a decent staff, but like there are better things at that level. Like, I mean, if you're really lucky, you get like the Staff of Jordan, which I
What
mean,
about the Black
is
Fathom Depths one?
Black
The
Fathom
from-
Depths one that that has spirit and
I can't remember if that's stats on it. There's also the rod from the big elemental creature in Wailing Caverns, but I don't think it has spell power.
See, and it depends. Like, they're at low level, and we're talking a lot of different people are experiencing a different. So if you're experiencing it in early game, a lot of those items change. But it also depends on like what class you are, right? If you're a Shadow Priest, maybe it would be really nice to get some gear with spell power, but you really got to make sure you have enough, for things like life tap, other things like that, But it's really cool when you get like a low level piece of gear like that has spell power, and I think that's why I would always go for the dagger and the offhand over the staff, because you can stack up spirit and intellect on the rest of your gear. Go for the nice weapons. The staffs, I mean they're really cool. They're fun to have. They give you a shit ton of intellect, give you a shit ton of
actually really good
stam.
for warriors.
Yeah, because it has a
34.7 damage per second, 10 spirit. That's actually nice for warriors.
Yeah. So like the spirit would be really nice for the priest as well. But I personally would go for the spell power set and just worry about spirit with the rest of your gear, because like I said, at that level, I mean, you can get your Shadow Weave set soon, but getting that much spell power is really nice. But you got to balance it out, right? It's all about balance. You want to make sure you have enough spirit, things like that. So depending on the other gear that you have, it could definitely work. But it's great for mages.
Better with utility gear than stat gear.
Exactly.
So some benefit more from flat stats than others.
Mm-hmm. Like warlocks, I would say maybe a little bit more.
Yeah, but also like now it's a weapon, but like as a shaman, I would usually have utility items equipped rather than just flat stats, because you can do so much burst as a shaman anyway. You have like not that much utility. So if you kind of even that out with a bit more utility, you actually become very versatile as a class.
That's true. See, it's a little bit different as a priest, right? You have when you go, you have a wand, and like the name of the game for a priest is being as mana efficient as you can. So the more spirit you have, the more you benefit with your spirit tap. I mean, you can essentially go on with not drinking at all. So you have to weigh that against, I might do a little bit more damage. I might kill this mob a little bit quicker. But if I stack spirit, I'll never have the drink, and I'll kill 5 mobs quicker than I'll kill, these 3 that I did with my other gear. So it's a little bit different when looking at a thing with a priest, but it's also just awesome to have that kind of gear. And, I love the fact, and a lot of times you're going to be healing as well. So if you can't find, say you don't get Hand of Righteousness or whatever, it's nice to be able to have something where, it gives you a little bit of spell power, but it also affects my healing as well. So it's definitely something I would grab and, work my gear out as I going along, see what other gear I have. But, great item.
Let me ask you about this one. Now, I think, by the way, I found a better website, hopefully, that will fix up my noobiness when it comes to the stats. But we've got the Mantle of Doan sitting there. Now, we just talked about how Blood Mage Thalnos dropped some, nice little blue shoulders. And here we are again with more caster shoulders. Like, do you find that odd that they've kind of doubled up there?
No, especially from the boss, it's like he's a caster. So it's really cool that you see like caster gear drop. I love that kind of stuff. Like look at, Herod, you know what I mean? Like he drops more of like warrior shaman type gear because he's like that art guy from Armory. So I think it's kind of lurish and kind of cool that you see, spell power cloth gear dropping off of a mage basically.
But do you find it funny that you theoretically could have gone through Graveyard first, gotten your shoulders off of Thalnos and gone, fucking sweet, this is awesome, what an upgrade. Worn them for all of 3.5 seconds and then upgraded, 1% to Doan's shoulders.
Yeah, and then,
probably more than one cast in the group then.
Oh yeah, no, I'm just, absolutely, I'm just saying hypothetically that could happen though, and it'd be a bit weird.
It does happen a lot. Yeah, it's like, I just got an upgrade. No.
You can get like tier leggings and then an epic, which is better on its own, drops, and then you're kind of like, oh fuck. You just kind of have to, it's what happens, I guess.
That's vanilla.
Exactly. And like a lot of times you get lucky like that and you'll get, the best piece of gear that you got and you'll be happy with that. If you want to keep running and you have your chance to get other stuff. So, and I'm pretty sure, and I know the quest rewards as well. I think you get some other good stuff as well. There's more shoulders that drop. There's other good stuff. So yeah, you're definitely going to be cycling through gear, but like Orcbit said, you're going to be going with other people as well. So chances are you'll get one piece of good gear. If you get like the chapeau or something like that, I always love that on my priest. Has a lot of spirit, has a lot of intellect. So, and that's a headpiece that, is like amazing as a priest. But, there's a lot of great gear as a caster in SM. A lot of great gear.
All right, boys, let's move on to the armory. Who's got fond memories of the armory?
Fuck.
Orcbit, what was that?
Every shaman does.
I think everyone does.
Why shamans, Melderon?
Do you know what happens the first time you get a weapon when the weapon does something that your class can't do?
Yeah.
Do you know that feeling? Like, that's insane. I mean, I know it sounds crazy. It's just a game, but I mean, back then, you're like, I can fucking whirlwind now and wind fury and earth shock and rest myself. It feels amazing to get that utility, even though that it might be unhandy, like sometimes, but it's still so cool because your class can't do it, and now you can.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. I feel the same way. But the biggest reason is because all the drops, literally there's only one boss in Armory, and all the drops are like amazing for shamans. So as soon as you hit 40, you're able to wear mail. So
those shoulders.
Yeah. Shoulders with 6 strength, 15 stamina. Headpiece with 8 stamina, 13 strength, and 1 crit. And then the Scarlet leggings have like 20 strength, 10 stam, and then the Ravager is 37.3 damage per second with the Whirlwind.
And let's not forget, you get 1% crit on the Raging Berserker's helm.
Yeah, you can even get the pieces. Like the Scarlet is a set, as far as I remember. You can get the green pieces. Yes. They also drop from the trash. And I think the second bonus, like 2-piece bonus or something, is 20 attack power or something. I think it's damage.
I think it's attack power for fighting undead, something like that, though.
Yeah, it's at least worth it. Like you're pretty set. Like as a warrior or enhancement shaman. You know?
But dude, I mean, so let's talk about the Ravageur for a sec, guys, because I've seen Melderon have it. I've seen a lot of shamans have it. I mean, the fact that some people will say, "Oh, the proc can be annoying because it can take break CCs, things like that." But overall, it's an amazing proc. Now, how much damage does that do? And can it proc Wind Fury?
We've got 104 to 157 and 37.3 DPS.
I don't think it can proc Wind Fury.
That's a good question. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Since it's an ability on its own, I mean,
right.
I don't think the yellow hit of Storm Strike can proc Wind Fury, but the white hit can, right?
Right.
So this is orange or yellow damage as well, right? I mean, it's an ability. I don't know.
I think it's white damage.
It's white damage. It's white damage.
It might. Then it might.
Yeah.
I actually don't know.
So we gotta look into that, guys. We gotta look into that. See if that can proc Wind Fury, that'd be sick.
Yeah, so the big thing with these pieces, all four of them are amazing, right? But so for hunters, they also progress from leather to mail in 40, but strength doesn't really do crap for hunter. It increases their melee attack power, so who cares? But warriors, especially like warriors that are focusing on DPS, so they are going to want these really bad because it increases, even though they're progressing to plate at 40, it doesn't matter. I mean, these are just so good. So I've been in groups where I was healing, and I wasn't rolling on because I stick to the rule. If I'm healing, I don't roll in DPS gear. That's just kind of my little thing, unless no one wants it, right? But I was in with another shaman and a warrior, and these guys were like, the shaman won, and this warrior got so mad because he's like, effing shaman, blah blah blah. You're subpar DPS X, Y, and Z. Why do you get it? All this, and all this. I've seen, and that's happened multiple times where I've heard people like saying shamans are stealing the gear from warriors or whatever. And I just think it's funny. I don't believe that, of course.
It's such bullshit, too, because, shamans, you could argue that it's shaman gear more than, dude, in a couple levels, you're going to be wearing plate. It's level 37 gear. As soon as I hit 40, I'm putting the shit on. You can wear plate, find something maybe that's just as good or better. But, I don't think it's more warrior gear, definitely. I
wonder if paladins and warriors do the same thing on the line.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to be the devil's advocate a bit and be like, because this is vanilla, right? We all know that the quality of your armor, at least in PvE, doesn't really matter. I mean, you have warriors wearing leather, mail, whatever. I mean, you just want the best stats, right? So it goes both ways. I would say it's just as much, the one as the other. If we start saying that it's more shaman because it's male, then the druid and the rogues are not going to give us the gold
leather
skin
pieces,
from Nax and stuff like that. So, the best healing chest on a shaman until tier 3 is a fucking dress from AQ, right? But you'll wear it and you'll wear it with pride until you fucking get to Nax and get your tier 3 piece, right?
That's right.
I remember back then I wanted to put on my 2.5 because it looks badass because it doesn't look like you're wearing a fucking dress, right? But you keep it on because you're healed, right? And this is kind of the same. If you want to go DPS as a shaman or as a warrior even, it's okay to wear mail over plate if it's better for your spec. Cause it's vanilla. I mean, it's just how it works. So I would say it's equally whoever can wear it and needs it.
Yeah, that's true.
The item design is just different in vanilla. It's a retail mentality, and a lot of people who are going to join Classic are going to be stunned by this, I think. And I think I mentioned it in my shaman guide, but you're going to be, wearing cloth as a shaman a lot, and leather, all this stuff. I mean, it's not until Nax where you're going to have a full set of tier 3 where you actually have full mail on.
That's true.
Some would even argue you could have the hat from AQ still, which is cloth. So you just, it's part of the, the weird itemization of vanilla that you'll be wearing this stuff.
And hopefully, we don't have to worry about loot trading. They said they would want it in there. I know.
It'll be.
I think it will be in there, to be honest, because the way they justify it is.
I know it's so
it's
stupid.
Solution to a problem that's going to be there no matter what. So their logic is, well, if we don't put it in there, people are just going to open the GM ticket,
right? And they'll have to do actual work. Yeah, oh no.
Yeah, But you can't really open a GM ticket for, I wanted it from my buddy.
Yeah, or you're like, listen,
exactly.
we made a mistake, blah, blah, blah. The GM will investigate it. And it's, it's not as easy as it is just for 4 people going in there. But anyway, let's move on with the Cathedral.
Yeah, it's getting too ranty. Sorry about that.
No, all good, all good. Like I said, I'm not afraid of a bit of a tangent, but moving on to, obviously we'll get to the Cathedral. And this is sort of, the money maker, the money shot, if you will, of, the Scarlet Monastery.
Money shot.
So,
Also, did we mention that you get the key from Arcanist Stone after you kill him? Did we mention that?
Yes, it's in the box.
Library.
I think
You get it like in a chest behind him, right?
Yeah, it's right behind Arcanist Stone Library. I don't know if we said that or not, but
now,
And same with the Cathedral key.
Oh, and also, Herod's, that's where the tabard drops. So also those.
Yeah, so when you kill the boss, to the people who don't know, the whole, imagine the whole armory is gonna come running.
Yeah.
And they're like normal mobs and not elites, so you can area them down, but there's gonna be 30 mobs or something. It's quite a lot.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't know it's coming, so when it's coming, fuck. And you AoE them down, and maybe there's one lucky guy who gets the tabard.
Yep.
You roll for it, I don't know.
Yeah.
But good luck with that.
Yeah, good luck.
Well, we teased High Inquisitor Fairbanks at the top of the show, and we were sort of sitting there going, what is he? Is he a boss? Is he a mini boss? What is he? I mean, he's definitely he's an optional boss, I guess you'd say, because it's a bit of a secret chamber that you find him. You got to, you got to hit the candles holder on the side or whatever, and the wall opens
Which
or
is
something like
so
that.
cool.
Yep.
Secret room kind of stuff.
I love that kind of stuff,
awesome.
dude. Yeah.
We have to remember, this is 2004, right? How many games were there out where you could interact with stuff in the environment? There's
Not many.
Much like that. And hiding a boss in there, I mean, Blizzard could just be obviously we know today, but imagine if no one ever knew. You didn't know you could click on shit.
Hiding a boss or a bus?
A bus. There's a huge bus.
There's a huge school bus in there. What an Easter egg.
Yeah.
Now,
I think it's cool. Interacting with the environment. I mean, of course we see that nowadays with crazy technology in gaming, but it's just ingenuity.
Definitely.
I like it.
Sorry, Orcbit.
Especially the law because he's dead.
I tease only because I love you, mate.
I know.
Now,
so the story behind him is awesome too.
Yeah, so he was, High Lord Mograin's most trusted advisor. He was there when they basically created the Ashbringer and all that stuff.
Yeah, he was the witness to the betrayal. The best part though is I love the I forget what it was about him, but didn't he go mad, or I forget something about it too.
I think he got his son. Oh, how was it? He's the best. He was a really good friend.
Let me read it out. I'll clear it up. So here's how it goes. Fairbanks was High Lord Mograin's most trusted advisor, or Mograine, however you say it, was present during the meeting in South Shore that led to the creation of the Ashbringer. Fairbanks was tricked and led along with the High Lord by Mograin's son, Renaud, to Stratholme, where legions of the Scourge awaited them. Fairbanks was the first to fall, but did not die. He was trapped and hidden under the corpses of the undead. He bore silent witness to Renaud's betrayal of his father, hearing Mograin's anguished cries as Ashbringer was plunged through his heart and fouling the blade. Kel'Thuzad later resurrected Mograine as a Death Knight. Making his way back to the Scarlet Monastery, Fairbanks told the tale of betrayal to anyone who would listen. Those who believed him broke away from the crusade to found the Argent Dawn. Fairbanks was subsequently murdered by the remaining crusaders for his blasphemy, as well as possibly showing symptoms of the plague. His body was discarded in a secret chamber in the Scarlet Cathedral.
That's
really cool, man. That's so cool.
So cool. I don't know. Do you guys know Tales of the Past?
Oh, dude, yeah. I love that show, man.
No, I don't.
Everybody, what?
Oh my god, dude, I used to love that.
Do yourself a favor
show.
Tonight or whenever, or if you have time, if you have 3 hours to spare at some point, there are 3 machinima movies. The first one is kind of short. It's just 10 minutes and there's no audio.
Yeah.
The second one is where they really bump up the production value.
So good.
With real nice voice acting, incredible animation work and stuff like that. And the third one, the pinnacle, it's it's the story of Ashbringer, kind of told by a machinima fan maker
it's
called
so freaking
Martin
good,
Falk, Danish guy, and it's just amazing. The story, the characters, everything.
It's a classic.
It's my all-time favorite.
Yeah.
Oh, you've never seen them, Melderon?
No.
Oh, dude. Oh my god. I thought
are back from vanilla. You have to remember when you watch this, the production value, it's vanilla and the start of Burning Crusade, and it's really good.
It's really good, and it's all about the story of the Ashbringer. It's just it's friggin' amazing.
I've just found it. I'll have to watch it.
Yeah, all you guys gotta watch.
My all-time favorite machinima.
Yep.
Very good.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna watch this later. Holy.
Yeah, for sure.
Even the newer ones, not to shit new machinima makers, but this is a piece of art. This is a legit movie. I've watched it, I don't know, maybe 5 times or something.
I've watched it probably twice, all 3 of them, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, Fairbanks, and I love, like, when you go in Cathedral, right, and it's very similar, you have the corridors and all, but then you get to the garden part, right, and there's that huge fountain that comes down, that big fountain area where the water is. You go up there, right, and you see the huge doors to the cathedral. You fight your way through all that, you go up those steps, and then you open the door, and they're all down there kneeling down towards the altar where Morgraine is. And it's just like such an amazing visual. And then one by one, you kill those mobs, and then I just love that feeling of like progressing through the dungeon, feeling like you're getting to the bad boss at the end. Like I said, going earlier, that quintessential classical, adventure feeling. But man, when you open those doors, dude, I mean, come on, like when you open those doors, it is such an amazing feeling. And you see those guys all kneeling there. It's so cool.
Yeah. Plus, if you gotta make sure you kill them all, because if you pull the boss, they all run. So
they all pull. Yep.
And it's an amazing instance to farm Cloughin as a mage.
Oh yeah,
because you can pull the whole room. Oh, it feels so good.
It does. And then that boss fight. I mean, we could talk about that. That boss fight is.
I'm curious because I've been wanting to ask about this since I knew we were talking about Scarlet Monastery. If this happened to you, especially if anybody listening or any of you, if you played Shaman. I remember, and my friends that were there as well, I remember way back, like early days, we did it. And when you were put to sleep, if you put down the tremor, it would break it and you could kill her before she rests him anyway.
Really? I heard about that. I heard about that as well. That never happened to me though. No.
That legitimately happened to us as a group.
Really?
And you don't get the loot. We thought we were being really good and doing it because now she doesn't get to rest him, but you don't get any loot then.
Dude.
That's crazy.
That happened, yeah. So I really want to hear if it happened to other people, like if it actually was a thing or if it was just like a bug.
See, I played Alliance, so I never,
Oh, yeah, because that happened to us while leveling.
No, I did. I don't know. Like, I remember, like, I was trying to, vanish out of it. I don't think you can bubble out of it either.
Not anymore.
No.
But back then?
Yeah, back then. Yeah. It's so cool, dude. Like, because Tremor would get everyone out of, but Bubble would only do one. So I wonder what would happen in that instance, but I don't think you could either. That's crazy though, man. Like, I love little things like that. And it's so cool. You actually didn't get a loot. That's crazy. That's so crazy.
We thought,
I would have been
looking at it. You think you're doing something that's good, right? You think like,
we figured how to do this.
You think you do, but you don't.
Yeah, because you would have been running around flexing, going, "How fucking badass are we?" Oh wait, we got no reward.
Yeah.
By the way, did you guys watch the opening to BlizzCon where Mike Morhaime said something like, "You all think you know J. Allen Brack, but you don't." Or something.
That was great.
Yeah. I was like,
yeah, we still do.
You know, JL on crack. JL on crack.
JL on crack. They're all firing.
I love you, Jay. I love you. Kind of love you and hate you. Yeah, I'm sure he's a good guy. Anyway.
I've to be fair, funnily enough, just to tie that one off, funnily enough at BlizzCon, I'll tell you this much, getting on the piss with some of the Blizzard employees, they all said, and it wasn't just, pissing in my pocket or whatever. They were like, look, we all know what you guys say about J. Allen Brack. The funny thing is, he's a fucking great guy. And they're not like...
I've actually heard that.
Yeah, they're not saying they're not saying he's a nice guy. They were like, he's a fun fucking guy. And I was like, oh, okay.
I remember your episode, Josh, with the guys from NOS when they went there.
Yeah.
They said that he was one of the most, it seemed like he was one of the most passionate ones about Classic and all that. And it seemed like he was really interested in it. So I'm sure the public view of what Jay is like, and it's just that right now he's the head of the company and what they're doing right now. And I just wish he would get the balls to just say screw you, Activision. We're going to be the Blizzard that we've always been. Yeah. The guys who borrowed money from their grandmoms to make what they could. And I just wish that he would do that, now and be the guy that we all need him to be right now.
I'm not sitting here sort of either defending or attacking him. I'm really I'm pretty ambivalent when it comes to him, to be honest with you, because I know fuck all about him.
Yeah.
To be fair though, what he has said and stuff, it's actually not that stupid. If you think about the majority of the modern WoW's player base, they wouldn't probably like like something like vanilla. At least
100%.
Yeah,
at least not
true.
instantly. So for him to say, because like, let's be real, like throughout the history, it's been like a minority that's been asking for this. Probably still is, even though it seems like it's the majority, but like most people just don't say anything. I mean, we have to remember there's millions of people playing this game, and there's maybe a couple of 100,000 being very active on forums and stuff.
And I do agree.
When he says stuff like that, I mean, obviously when I sit there, I'd be like, what the fuck do you know? Right? But he's not talking to me. He's just talking to BlizzCon, to Blizzard fans, like in general, because the people who never had the idea back home playing Cataclysm, like, you know, I want a vanilla server. The people who never had that idea, and then they hear this statement like, bring back old servers, what? Of course he's going to say, nah, you think you want that, but you don't, because you play this game now.
Yeah, it was a slightly,
I don't think he's like,
it was a slightly poorly worded message, very slightly. I didn't take great offense to it, but it was slightly
thank
poorly
God
worded.
We got a lot of good memes out of it.
Oh,
Yeah,
I know, but I like
exactly.
I want to tie in Scarlet Monastery in this too, but I like what you said about not a lot of people would like that at first, because after a while you play the game, you realize that vanilla is a lot more casual friendly than people think. And, you know, at the end of the day, you might just be able to go with your group of buddies and do Scarlet Monastery and have that experience where you're doing SM and that's your experience of playing vanilla WoW. Like you're leveling.
Dude, that's enough.
Exactly.
That was my experience with WoW for months. I didn't hit, it took me literally, my first character took me like 16/play days to get to 60, which is insane, right?
Yep.
I mean, for nowadays, it's like, 6 days or something like that. If people who are crazy do it in 4, and
I know
you can have months and months of gameplay just doing like leveling.
Oh, I think Vanilla WoW is extensively casual friendly, just purely through the questing system. The great thing about Vanilla is it's great for casuals because you think you're doing great. Because you don't know any of this min-maxy fucking best way to level, all that stuff, And if you're ignorant to it, that's fine. You're still having a good time. So it doesn't really matter. But, just one final thing on Jalen Brack. I'll come back, and a lot of people sort of missed this. In my interview with Alex Brazzi, he mentioned that J. Allen Brack was like the healer in the Blizzard Guild, and he was fucking good, and he loved it. So
I heard that. That's interesting.
By the way, just something I've never, had the chance to tell you, and I think we should all kind of like appreciate that now.
You got to tell me you love me.
I was gonna say maybe this isn't the right place for that.
I want to kill you and take your animals. Like I fucking
want to drive around in your skin for a while.
That you sit down with all these people that I would never talk to. I would never take I don't even know where to contact these people. And you put them on. You show people a side of these kind of put away characters almost, right? We hear about them, we read about them on the box set, right? Lead designer or whatever shit, And I think it's really cool that you actually do this stuff and keep doing it.
Absolutely.
Dude.
Absolutely, dude.
All right, boys, let's finish up. Again, I'm more than happy. These are some great tangents we're going on, and God, we're just gonna have to sit down one day and just
praising you.
Hey, that's what happens when you get Defcamp, Melderon, and Orcbit on the show.
No, I love it. We're just one day. I'm just going to sit us all down and not even have a fucking topic and just go. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, that would be shit.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea.
It's not a bad idea though, honestly. Yeah.
You should probably not do it live.
Let's wind up with the one final big bad encounter. We've kind of touched on a little bit. Let's talk about High Inquisitor Sally Whitemane, and obviously you've got as well Mograine as well.
Yep.
And we've got, let's start with the memes. I mean, to be fair, I didn't really get in on the joke until much later with the Arise My Champion.
Oh, yeah. Arise My Champion.
Arise, yeah.
I mean, she knows what she's doing.
Oh,
yeah.
She sure does. But you see it all over the net now, obviously. Like people, you jump on YouTube and everyone wants to say like, "Arise my champion." But I think that and obviously we've seen like cosplay at BlizzCon recently. There was an amazing cosplayer, a very famous one, I'm sure. I'm sorry I'm forgetting her name, but who dressed up as High Inquisitor Sally Whitemane. It's an amazing look for this character.
That's so cool. That's really cool.
That's what you appreciate.
That's badass.
I just think, a lot of thought has gone into the design of this character, and I think she looks fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just the whole fight.
That's really cool.
You clear the whole room, right? Or I hope you do. You clear the whole room. You see this big guy with a big mace, which by the way is real nice if you don't get the axe from Armory. Sweet mace. And then you go, okay guys, let's do this. We can do this, right? You attack him and pull him and stuff is going kind of well. And, you know, you finally managed to, I can't remember if it bubbles before you, if it's over.
He bubbles, yes. Yeah.
Yeah. But you finally managed to kill him and you're like, oh, we did it. And then the fucking doors open. And then this, you know, this woman comes to the battlefield. You're like, what's going on here? And she just puts you to sleep and versus this guy that you just killed. And now there are two.
Holy shit.
Yeah, you have to deal with two of them. And you're like, who do we kill?
Yep.
So you kind of like struggle, like, oh shit, kind of figure out, okay, we have to go on her. It's just like, yeah, it's just so cool because it's a surprise.
It is really cool. And you know what, too? I love the fact that all this plays out, right, in this amazing scene. Like, I mean, like the visual of where you are in this cathedral, at the altar, in this place, in Tearsful, like, you put it all together, where you are, what you just did. You just went through all of Scarlet Monastery. You got to the very end. You're killing Mograine. And you put that all into perspective, and then this epic moment happens where she reses him, and you have to fight her again, and then you kill her, and then it's like, holy shit, that was amazing. To think the developers,
great design.
It's so amazing. Such a good job. But yeah, such good, amazing development. And then the friggin' gear that drops.
Oh, the gear is amazing.
Oh my god, dude! Like I said, I had the chapter until I was level 60. I had the Hand of Righteousness until I was 60. I think there's a amazing shield that drops as well. There's like such good
the shield.
There's also the shield is friggin'
he's the Scarlet Commander. Yeah.
Yes, that's it. Yeah, and dude, it's just like such good drops.
You can literally gear out your shaman. So it's like I keep thinking about this shaman wise, but like, so if you get all the 3 pieces from Herod, right, and then you get the Gauntlets of Divinity from that's a plus 32 attack power male hand piece, right?
Yep.
And then I think the Mograine's Might, it's the 2-hander is better than the Ravager because it has a higher DPS and it has 16 spirit, 7 stam, 17 stam. Sorry.
Wow.
So I think that's better than, because I mean, the whirlwind mechanic's cool and all, but I'd rather have the static damage personally.
Yeah. I mean, personally, I only
unless it procs Wind Fury.
Yeah. Sorry.
Could you imagine if it actually procced Wind Fury? You
I know,
go into a bunch of mobs and you proc, like you hit 10 of them.
Wind
Fury. Server crashes, you get banned. Like,
causes a black hole in the middle of Azeroth.
There's like Well of Eternity 2.0.
Now, Defcamp, you mentioned the chapeau. Obviously that there's a chapeau. That's amazing. 14 spirit, 14 intellect, 9 stamina. Now I'm really caught up by the neck piece, the triune amulet, 7 intellect, 7 spirit, 7 stamina. That's amazing for a neck piece at that level.
Oh my god. Especially for a priest. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
so you get that gear, and honestly, I had that, and I love the way, if you ever look, so you get this offhand, I think, from doing the quest as well. I wish I had a picture of my priest. I think I have a picture of him at level 40ish or so. So the offhand actually goes on your back, and it looks really cool. So as your priest, right, you have this offhand, you have the Hand of Righteousness, which looks amazing, and then there's red cap. My level 40 priest looks better than he does. Like, I love the MC gear when it gets changed, but he looks so cool at level 40 when you have that set. And then I had the Scarlet Tabard as well. And that offhand, dude, like, I just can't say enough how so you know how like swords, when they go on your back, well, the offhand goes on your back and it goes like kind of sideways. I forget the name of that offhand, but you get it from doing the quest. Yes, the cane. Yes, thank you. Prophetic cane. So you have the prophetic cane. I had the Hand of Righteousness and then that headpiece. And, I looked so cool. Like, I love the way you look with that gear. And if you guys know what I'm talking about, if you play an undead priest or whatever, any other kind of priest, it looks so good. The visual of that gear is friggin' amazing.
Now, well, Defcam, one piece of gear I want to push you on, because you've mentioned many times through this talk about the Hand of Righteousness. Now, you tell me why you sort of, keep losing your mind over this item, because the layman like me looks at this thing and I'm like, all right, that's got some pretty sweet DPS, I guess, but I'm looking at the stats and going, well, +8 spirit,
plus healing,
and then plus healing but only by 15. I'm kind of like, well, why is that so exciting?
It's literally, I mean, unless you find like a stream that has comparable, it's going to be probably the best item you're going to get until level 60 for healing.
What about the Vexing came from ZF?
Well, I mean, that was, I'm talking, okay, so I'm going on how I was playing on private server. Vex K wasn't available yet.
In ZF?
No. I'm talking about when I was playing. It came out, I think, patch 1.4. The Vexing
I didn't
Cane
know that. I thought
that.
It came with launch.
Well, the Vexing Cane is what? The
the boss in Zul'Farrak. That gives
the undead dude, right? Yeah.
21 healing and damage.
Is it a
so it's not available. It's a staff. It's not available when the actual game launched. So like on private server, it wasn't available until I think like patch 1.4 or so. So I wasn't able to get that because I was leveling when the server first came out, and the Vexing Cane wasn't even on the loot table yet. So I'm talking in regards of before that was on the loot table. So before all that stuff's on the loot table, that is the best item you can get. When I leveled my priest on private servers, nothing else was available on the loot table. Vexing Cane wasn't available yet. So the Hand of Righteousness,
the same patch.
No, it's after that, I believe. I think it's even after that.
Also, the fight was just a one-hander. You can combine it with a shield.
Exactly. You can combine that with an offhand. And with the Vexing Cane, it's great. You get a lot of intellect, a lot of spirit, and the spirit as well. When you're playing, whether you're Shadow, whether you're, especially if you're Shadow, while leveling, you want a lot of spirit because I'm telling you, the more spirit you have, the more mobs you'll be able to kill without drinking. Even if you're going to be doing a little bit more damage, spirit helps. And, when you're leveling up as Shadow and you need to get healing gear, because you can heal just fine as Shadow, you want to find as much plus healing gear as you can. And like I said, the Hand of Righteousness, at that point of the game, before all the other things come on the loot table, is the best piece of gear until you get the Hand of Grace from BRD.
All right. Well, I consider myself question answered. Thank you very much.
But it probably won't be that way in Classic. So expect you probably will be able to get the Vexing Cane out in Classic.
All right.
So
because it starts a Time Wall patch.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, guys, look, that's pretty much everything that we've covered. So I just want to round it up with sort of closing thoughts on everything. And I guess I'd probably ask you all this, Melderon. I'll start with you. How many times are you going to run Scarlet Monastery while leveling? Because that's the one thing I keep asking myself. Like, I'm kind of like the person who I might do an instance once, maybe twice, and then I've had my fun and I'm moving on, right? But this has a lot of great stuff. Would you find yourself repeatedly coming back?
Since I'm rolling Shaman, I'll probably wind up doing Armory at least 4 times and Cathedral probably at least once. At least.
Yeah.
And that's if all 4 times I get the piece I want dropping, right? So, I don't know. Cause Armory, if you're in a good group, can be really quick. So if you can, get through Armory, I wouldn't be surprised if I run SM like close to 10 times, at least Armory.
Yeah, same here.
Specifically Armory. Yeah.
For me, it'd be Cathedral that I run a lot. And you know what? I'm going to go there once when I'm done, when I get all my gear, just to have fun again and do them all and help some people. And I want to just throw a quick shout out to Rettiton for the win, who said that he did Scarlet Monastery over a span of 20 levels and spent, I think, months while he was there, and he loved every second of it.
Wow.
I might do the same this time around as well.
Wow.
I love SM.
All right, guys. Well, we can't wait to do it. You'll see us all in there. You'll find me hanging out in the most boring part of the instance in the graveyard. And, I can't wait to get back there. And, like I said, I haven't had the chance to run in there on a private server yet, but I'm very much so looking forward to it for Classic. And, we'll have to, get you guys back for another instance sometime. But, that's been Scarlet Monastery. And I just want to give you guys the opportunity now. Obviously, it goes without saying, I highly recommend everyone listening to this podcast right now goes and checks out everyone involved in this call. Obviously, you've got Defcamp and Melderon. They do a combined channel. You'll find them at Defcamp and Melderon TV over at YouTube. I'm going to let you guys plug everything and anything you want to plug in a second. Orcbit does amazing videos over at YouTube as well. I can't recommend his channel enough. There are certain content creators out there that I will really throw my weight behind and really strongly recommend that you check out. These are the people that I watch. They're the people that I recommend. There's not everything is created equal when it comes to Classic, and I think that these guys do an amazing job. So now I'll give you guys a chance. Defcamp, Melderon, anything you guys are working on at the moment or anything else that you want to shout out?
That means a lot, Josh. I just want to say that. But, Melderon, do you want to go and do the house cleaning? He usually does it.
Sure. Housekeeping. Yeah. Housekeeping.
He's the main guy.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. Defcamp Melderon TV on YouTube. We have a Twitter at def_MelTV. We have a Discord as well. You can find all the links in our video descriptions. And we're part of a Classic WoW Live project, which we're working on a new version of the website, so that's still coming. So definitely check that out in the future.
All right. Orcbit, what's going on with you, mate?
And I'm going to be streaming PvP, Shaman PvP until
Nice.
the summer, until Classic. So if you like PvP and you like hanging out and chilling about Classic, just, I'm on YouTube at YouTube/Orcbit, and you can find me on Twitter at OrcbitGG. But I do have a Twitch. You can go follow it as well. It's OrcbitGG. Where I'll probably be streaming when it's actually live, but until then it's going to be on YouTube because it's more safe with this kind of stuff.
Fantastic. Well, look, guys, I had a great time again. Obviously this is more of an opportunity for you guys to kind of talk amongst yourselves. I definitely acquiesce to the experts on this call, and there are points where I'm so glad that I'm lucky enough to know you guys, because you clearly know your shit. It's so great to hear you all just talk amongst yourselves on the finer points of the game, particularly, just a small little niche corner of the game like this particular instance. And everyone heard how much of a noob I am, and contrast that against how much, you guys know about the game. And I can't wait to have you back next time. So thank you, and I'll see you then.
Thanks, Josh.
Thanks for having us, Josh.
This week on my other podcast, The Cinephiles, we covered 1989's Ghostbusters 2. A non-stop reading of the 50 Shades of Grey trilogy as read by Gilbert Gottfried. Now I put it in her hands. You are the sub. I am the master. If you'd like to hear more from the Cinephiles, then please do log on to cinephiles.com. That's SINNERFILES. Or search for the Cinephiles on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from. But now, let's get back to Countdown. Okay, it's time for another Countdown to Classic caller, and we have someone on the line to talk about Enhancement Shaman. And who are we speaking with today?
Yeah, my name is Frederick. I'm from Sweden, and my Discord name is Sakuraba.
Thanks for joining us, Sakuraba. And you contacted me. We were actually meant to have this call a little while ago, but we couldn't meet up. But thankfully, we're here today. And you told me that you wanted to talk about Enhancement Shaman after hearing the call with Melderon and Orcbit, obviously where we talked everything and anything shamans, and something about Enhancement you wanted to add on, that you tend to play that spec a little bit differently. Is that right?
Yeah. I played more in a spell damage melee class. It was really for fun first back in retail vanilla, but then I tend to see that in PV the damage is really good because it's more sustained and it's more reliable than the wind fuel proc. And I don't know if you want to go into details like builds and so on, but the elemental, you need to go in the shaman tree and the elemental tree down to elemental fury. And it's spec'd around like getting high spell crit and spell damage. And then you have a shield or a offhand and a fast main hand. And you use primarily flame tongue, but if they are flame immune, fire damage immune, you use frostbrand instead. And the tactics is that elemental fury affects flame tongue and frostbrand, so you get the 100% crit bonus from the talent. Based around that, you have elemental devastation that gives you 9% critical strike with melee attacks if you spell crits. So when you shock, you tend to get a lot of crits if you have high spell crit, and then you get higher melee crit. And that will give you more flurry uptime, because flurry starts with crits to get higher attack speed, and then you get more flame tongue procs. It's a bit different build that you go for like main stats is spell damage and spell crit and int. And then after that you can have some MP5 or something like that to get the mana. And it's basically all around like using it as a melee class, but your damage is from shocks and from flame tongue procs and getting a lot of fury and flurry and keeping it up. So that it's not the same burst as a Wind Fury, but you get a lot more sustained damage. And I tend to do more damage with that in PvE. Of course, when you talk about with raiders, they always talk about what's viable. And of course, like Enhancement Shaman is still not something you pick if you want to be like high-end raiding team, but you can get groups if you get like lower tier raiders who get more casual. So I think it's a fun build to go. And even in PvP, it's fun. If you use like Hand of Edward the Odd, the mace you can get is like a level 57. You can have fun with it like your free Maelstrom proc, but in vanilla. It gives you, have you heard about the mace?
No, I haven't heard of this one.
No, it's a world drop. It's an epic mace with 1.6 speed. It gives like the next spell cast within 4 seconds will cast instantly when you get the proc. So you can, I play around with it for fun in PvP that when you proc it, you can use Lightning Bolt as instant or heal. So you can have the same feeling as when they introduced the Maelstrom for Shamans and they could get like 5 stacks and a spell goes instant, but instead you use this mace in vanilla. So you can play around with that as well.
Mm-hmm.
In my opinion, my experience, when you do PvE, people tend to talk like viable. I don't like the expression. I think there are builds that are optimal, like optimal builds, like if you want to be like top tier cookie cutter builds.
Yep.
But I think like every build is viable. I mean, if you tend to, you can go as a DPS Retribution Paladin. You can go as an Enhancement Shaman. It's not optimal for the guild, but it's viable. In my opinion, I think sometimes when they talk about viable, it feels like you can't use it, but of course you can use it as a build if you want to. Of course, people are going to say that, you're going to let that rogue or DPS warrior carry you and so on and so on. But I mean, it all depends on the guild, and you can find guilds that would take a shaman who can totem dance or what you want to call it. And
absolutely. Well, if I can just ask this now, you said that this little sort of, twist of yours on Enhancement Shaman is a bit more reliant on spell damage. Now, explain it to me like I'm a complete idiot when it comes to Shaman, because I am. Because what I'm wondering is, obviously, is the stock standard build for Enhancement not based around spell damage at all, but you've just weaved this in?
Yeah, as like the regular Enhancement Shaman, you go like strength and you have agility for crit and so on.
Right.
Like it's pretty much built like a Retribution Paladin or a warrior.
Right, and spell damage is more attributed generally to elemental shamans, isn't that right?
Yeah. But the thing is that Flame Tongue and Frostband are both, Elemental Fury is a talent in the elemental tree that gives 100% crit bonus damage to Fire, Frost, and Nature spells. Also affects Flame Tongue and Frostbrand. So therefore, they do higher crits when you have that talent.
Right. So what is it about the enhancement spec in general that's sung out to you over, let's say Resto or Elemental?
I played some Elemental. The thing is that I never been fond of healing. I tank some with my Shaman, but I never been fond of healing. And I think I always like the melee part. I always plays like melee classes when I play games. I like it more than caster, not always, but I tend to like it more. And I like the speed of it because I like using totems and twisting around with those, and you can use them in different situations and so on. So that's more that. I think that Elemental is fun. You do high damage, but I think it's a bit immobile. It's like a standing still turret shooting. So it doesn't appeal to me. I would rather play like a mage or something if I want to be a caster.
Yeah, fair enough. Now, in terms of, you mentioned the specifics of the build. You haven't gone into it yet, but I might as well ask, where are you putting your points? Like in terms of, are the number of points different to the regular Shaman spec, or are the Enhancement Shaman spec, or are the points the same, they're just going in different places?
Well, it's 21 in Elemental Tree and 30 in Enhancement, and then 0 in Resto. And if I use it in PvE, I need to like take the Reverberation that gives like a lower cooldown on shocks. And of course, it's pretty much like I get both the first tier spells or talents, Convection and Concussion, to 5 each. Then I have like 1 in Call of Flames because I need 1 extra. And then Elemental Focus, of course, 1, 5 in Reverberation, and then 3 in Elemental Devastation, and then 1 in Elemental Fury. So that's my 21 points in the Elemental tree. And then I go like the standard in Enhancement tree. I take the mana bonus, the crit bonus. I take the 200 spell. I put it in like the enhanced totems, the flurry, and elemental weapons and weapon mastery. The enhancement tree is pretty much the same as a regular enhancement, but I skip Stormstrike because I need to skip Stormstrike to get elemental fury. So I don't take the last spell in enhancement tree for the build because then I can't get elemental fury. That is pretty much the reason for the build. So that's what I skip if you compare it to an enhancement.
Okay. Do you find this build is viable at all in PvP for you?
In PvP, I mean, I tend to go a mix and use the 200 with Wind Fury because it's better burst. In PvP, it's better with burst, in my opinion. Sometimes it's fun going like a 200 and using Frostbrand because with Frostbrand, it procs if it's like 8 times a minute or something. It's similar to the Seal of Command that the Retribution Paladin has in the proc rate, but it's harder than Flame Tongue. And with spell damage and Elemental Fury, it can crit for pretty much, but it's not as good, I would say, in PvP as a pure enhancement, because pure enhancement is more burst. But I tend to play it anyways because it's fun, in my opinion. It's a bit different.
In your time raiding as an enhancement shaman, you've talked, obviously, I completely agree with you that, play what you want. You'll find people that will go along to raids with any spec. So, people who are listening shouldn't be hampered. Obviously there are optimal specs. There are ones that the min-maxers will want to go along with them. But at the end of the day, whatever spec you are, you will likely find a raid spot somewhere with someone. But what I'm wondering with you is, have you found as an enhancement shaman going through raids, are there particular moments where you've really felt handicapped by being an enhancement shaman, whether there are particular bosses or particular encounters or particular raids?
It depends how you see it. If you look at the damage meters, of course you're going to feel handicapped because you are far down. But then it depends how you go. If you're using the Nightfall Axe, you're contributing to the team that way. It's more about a team effort when you're playing a shaman. If you look at a raid only by DPS meters, of course they are important. You need to take down the raid boss or something in a special time, and it's better to do a lot of damage, but it's still like you can contribute in different ways. I mean, Orcbit touched it a bit about what the totems did and enhancing the other player's damage. And I mean, if you have improved totems as an enhancement shaman, which you can't have as a healer because it's too further down, the improved weapon totems that increase Wind Fury totem with like 30% or something. And you know how to totem twist, jump between the Grace of Air and the Wind Fury totem and using that. I mean, you're giving a lot of the rogues and the Fury warriors and the tank like more damage and the tank at the aggro. So in that sense, it depends how you look at it. I mean, of course I'm going to feel gimped if I only look at the DPS stats. But I don't look at it that way. I don't tend to see raids like that.
Fair enough.
But I don't have the delusion that I'm going to be I mean, for the listeners, I think you always want to play a game for having fun. And if fun is for you to be like in a top guild, chasing world first and fighting a world bosses, of course you're going to play a cookie cutter build with a class that is needed. But if fun is for you, like, Melderon said, tanking in dungeons with a shaman, do that. Of course, you're not going to get a raid spot as tank, that you should know, but do that because that's fun. If you want to be an enhancement shaman and DPSing in a raid, do that. But you need to know that it's going to be harder to get a guild to accept you, but there are guilds that's going to accept you, and you pretty much need to be
No.
You need to put in the little extra than the Fury Warrior or something.
For sure. Now, last question for you. Are you going to do it again and roll Enhancement Shaman for Classic?
Yeah, no, I'm going to play Shaman. I played retail up to Kata, and I played Enhancement Shaman pretty much the whole way. I tried every other class. I had other characters and I tried other specs, but I always fell back to it. I like it. I enjoy it. I mean, it's fun playing Wind Fury as well. 200 is like a slot machine. You know, you go to the casino.
Yep.
And just hoping for a proc and a crit. And that feeling when you win. So it's a fun class to play in my opinion, but I think it's a bit neglected.
Oh, absolutely. It's generally one of the least played classes when I see the stats.
Yeah, and I reacted. I don't know if you have time, but you had, I don't remember his name, but he was talking about classes and what one of the developers, and he was talking about how he was disappointed with as developer, and he told me the Paladin on the podcast, and I was like, how can you say that when you have the Shaman there? Because I would say that one of who got the least love, in my opinion. I mean, I was there. If you remember that bus shock incident on the forums.
Yep.
You remember that story?
Yep.
I was there during that period, and it was heated. And even today, I can say with certainty that I could understand the community's reaction, because it still boggles me how they could fail that miserably.
Excellent. Well, look, Sakuraba, thank you so much for calling in. I really do appreciate it, and shining a bit more of a light on the shamans. They get neglected a little bit, but you're out there and we love to hear from you. So thanks so much for calling in.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi everyone, Josh here. I just want to take a quick moment to remind you that while Countdown to Classic will always be a podcast you can get for free, if you do happen to really enjoy the show and find yourself always coming back for more, then please do check out the show's Patreon page to see how you can help keep the lights on at Countdown to Classic, and even vote on show content as the show continues to bring you more and more classic WoW goodness. Alternatively, if monthly subscriptions aren't your thing, you can always visit the show's tip jar over at Ko-Fi, with that link being in the show notes and on the website too. Now, let's get back to the show. And with all those calls done now, as voted for by the Countdown to Classic patrons, it's time once again for Forum and Fauna. In Forum and Fauna, we go over what you, the players, had to say on various forums about the content of vanilla World of Warcraft, trying to hear both sides of the argument where applicable. And today, the Countdown to Classic patrons voted on the subject of the 4 Horsemen. So let's cover a bunch of posts over at mmochampion.com this week, starting with this one from user Warstar, who says this. Aside from overtuned bosses that were all of impossible to kill due to bad design pre-nerf, I think that the original iteration of the 4 Horsemen was the hardest, most complex fight in the history of World of Warcraft, and I don't know if it would have ever been beaten in that aspect. The encounter didn't have as many different mechanics compared to some of the modern day bosses whose raid info pages are a mile long, but the encounter had a full 40-man raid group broken up into many little groups that all had to rotate correctly or pretty much be killed instantly. In a raid group, unless you're in an amazing guild, there's typically at least one struggler that the rest of the raid is covering for, and that's always made very apparent on boss encounters where the raid has to split up and do multiple things at the same time. This has never been more apparent, nor will it ever again, unless Blizzard brings back serious 40-man raiding again, than on the original 4 Horsemen. There were 4 tanks, all tanking separate mobs. Now, I'll jump in and correct that one. Obviously, I know that the meta became 8 tanks, but they're saying 4. But let's move on. There were 4 tanks, all tanking separate mobs, and they had to rotate based on stacks of the debuff, and with taunt being spell hit back then, there could be some hairy situations due to taunt resists. You had between 10 to 12 healers who had different roles, some following tanks around, but because of the tanks' higher health pools, the healers had their own separate rotations they had to follow. Then you had 24 to 26 DPS split up into different groups. There was no Zerg the Meteor boss strat back then because the DPS just wasn't high enough, so you had to rotate out in multiple groups. You had some groups resetting stacks in the safe zone, and you had some on Mograine, and then you always had to have some with the tank to soak meteors. You also had to run in and out together because otherwise you risked taking a stray meteor to the face and being one-shot. People also had to deal with invisible void zones, with some people using that as an excuse when they just fucked up. It was a buggy mechanic that really did exist and would one-shot a healer if they didn't get out before the damage from it ticked. Think of moving on Heroic Lich King, except sometimes Defile was invisible and instantly killed you when it ticked its first damage. Not so much of a mechanic, but a common bug that had to be dealt with. But by far, the hardest mechanic was getting 40 people to split off and become extremely fragmented and yet still function as a whole and do their jobs, with it being almost impossible for the raid leader to see the entirety of the battlefield and keep an eye on everyone, even if someone could keep track of that many people moving at different times. So, I'd propose that the original version of the 4 Horsemen was the hardest boss encounter of all time, and will never be beaten just based solely on the amount of coordination it took to down that boss and the fact that Blizzard moved on from 40-man raids. So this user ends their post with the interesting proposition that this encounter, found in vanilla, will go down as the hardest boss encounter of all time. Now please appreciate that this post was made in 2013, so a lot has happened since then, but their point seems to bypass that wrinkle, as they seem to be suggesting that Blizz couldn't possibly design something as intense as the 4 Horsemen due to the simple fact that 40-man raids have gone the way of the dodo, and that extra element was enough to push this one over the edge. Now, I know many of you listening may be scoffing at that if you're a Mythic raider. I know nothing of the modern raids myself, but obviously I still hear all the chatter that things have gotten pretty damn difficult in recent years at that highest level of Mythic Plus. Now, to go in and bat for this poster's point, and we'll get the opposite view soon, let me just slip my hired gun pants on. Okay, there we go. He's right, damn it. Blizzard can never produce a more difficult encounter than the 4 Horsemen, and it will go down in the annals of history as the hardest thing a raid group had to take down. When you take into account the fact that it was a 40-person raid coordinating the encounter. And I'm saying that pre-nerf Cthulhu, in all of his mathematical impossibilities, doesn't quite count. Sure, there weren't too many mechanics to keep an eye out for with the 4 Horsemen, but the ones that were there hit hard. 2 ticks of Void Zone? Pack your bags. Do you like eating meteors for breakfast like it's a Final Fantasy game? Well, have I got the right kind of death for you? Oh, and by the way, this is one of those raid encounters where every last person not only has to be paying attention, but kind of be on top of their fucking game as well. Otherwise, you'll be attracting the raid leader's attention in no time. Dividing the raid up into different areas and taking on a horseman each sounds simple enough, but a lack of good communication and execution would quickly lead to a wipe. The horsemen, and of course I'm talking about it as if I've been through it when we all know that I fucking haven't, so just sort of, humor me on this one. The horsemen hit hard, and the tanks had best prey to the RNG and spell hit gods for the majority of those taunts to connect. So the fact that it was an incredibly tough encounter, coupled with 40 people as opposed to 25 people, needing to be, and I think it's 20 now, isn't it? Anyway, needing to be totally switched on was the reason why no encounter, despite how cute and tough it is at 20 odd people, could ever take down this one. Now, let me just change outfits here and run over to the other side of the bench. Okay, Now let's hear why it wasn't the hardest encounter we've ever seen. And we'll hear from a number of posters. This is going to go for quite a while, so bear with me. And the first one is a since deleted user over at MMO Champion again, who says this. It's correct that you needed 8 tanks, which was pretty much impossible for many guilds. Imagine a 25-man boss nowadays that needs 6 tanks, which alone would be a problem even with dual specs and 5 classes being able to tank. Only warriors were viable tanks back then. The fight as such wasn't so terribly complicated. Once you figured out after what debuff stacks you need to rotate, you just had not fail. Anyway, that's poorly worded. We'll move on. Kel'Thuzad Zud was definitely harder except for the said fact that you needed 8 warrior tanks. He had so many deadly mechanics for a classic WoW encounter while needing massive amounts of DPS and HPS. Hard to say which was the hardest encounter at their time, because Nax 40 was open just for a small amount of time and many guilds couldn't even try the bosses. Next we have this one from user RumRed, who says this. I agree with the hardest real part being finding 8 tanks with enough gear. Hell, some guilds had issue finding 4 tanks fully geared, much less 8. The fight really wasn't too bad once people got into a rhythm with the swapping from A to B to safe zone and repeating. The mechanics other than dealing with the marks were nothing compared to what you might see in today's fights. I would venture to say Zero Light's Yogg was harder and probably Heroic Lich King in terms of the mechanics, but those are the only ones I had experience with. For example, with Heroic Lich King, the Black Puddle of Death caused many a GG wipe. The time to react to that ability, from what I recall, wasn't much at all. Next we have another deleted user who says this. Most of these people have never done the fight. You didn't need 8 tanks with 4 set. You could get backup tanks with the old ZG, hit trinket, etc. The boss had a steep DPS requirement since you couldn't just DPS forever and had to wait for stacks to drop off. Bosses also used shield wall at certain percentages of health for around, I think, 30 seconds, which made it even steeper. That also had a 20-minute enrage, at which point the Horsemen spammed their main ability and marks every second. Invisible void zones could kill unaware people. Marks lasted a lot longer. I think it was 80 seconds if I remember correctly. And finally, when you killed a Horseman, they stay as a ghost where they die and continue putting out marks, meleeing, etc. The fight was nowhere near the hardest they've ever made though. By today's standards, it probably wouldn't last half a day if it was tuned up. The hardest boss in my opinion? Lei Shen on 25HC, Rag on 25HC, pre-nerf Firefighter and pre-nerf Yogg Zero Lights. Next we have this one from user Fangless who says this. The hardest part of the fight was having 40 people all do their job for like 10 minutes. Don't get confused. Next we have this one from Brewbear. In vanilla, usually taunt was one of the few things that kept the DPS from taking aggro, especially in tightly tuned DPS fights. It was really easy as a DPS to steal threat if you weren't careful, so one missed taunt and all of a sudden your normal rotation puts you above the tank and now you're one shot. And if you had 2 missed taunts in a row, oh boy. As for the amount of tanks, it's a similar issue EverQuest often had. You'd go through a bunch of bosses with a certain raid composition needed when all of a sudden you needed a geared class or classes which the other ones didn't. So now you've hit a brick wall having to gear up a bunch of extra tanks. Same thing here. No other fight required nearly the same amount of geared tanks. So all of a sudden you have a progression wall where you either go back and hope a bunch of extra dreadnought pieces drop for you or poach players from other guilds. And for the spell hit issue, your DPS also needed that so that they could kill the boss in time. Plus you often needed certain trinkets as a tank to make sure you could survive the big hits. So swapping out for a certain trinket in lieu of the 4-piece also wasn't always an option. Basically, vanilla raiding was a mess. I imagine that a lot of the difficulty was the same thing that made a lot of the vanilla raids challenging. It wasn't so much the mechanics as coordinating 40 people on the mechanics through the raid. Next we have this one from user Lanari who says this. 4 Horsemen wasn't even close to being the most mechanically challenging of the fights that WoW has ever produced, but as has been mentioned, the logistics were really bad. Between specialized gear, a different comp, and the general challenge of Nax, it was very difficult to even prepare for the fight. Keep in mind, at the time of Classic, not a lot of servers had more than 1 or 2 guilds progressing in Nax, and server transfers were on a 6-month cooldown. If you needed to add more qualified tanks to your roster, and you weren't a famous guild, you probably had to raid a guild that was halfway through AQ40 for their best tank, then spend a couple of weeks trying to get them the right gear before you could even make a serious attempt at the fight. Once you had all the logistics in place, the fight itself was pretty much clockwork. The real issue was mostly that the stacks of the debuff were applied every 12 seconds and lasted for 75 seconds at a very long range. Plus, if I remember correctly, each stack of the debuff reduced the tank's threat. So people would spend a very large percentage of the fight doing nothing but running from target to target. Even once you had everything in place, the fight wasn't easy. It could throw some serious damage numbers around, and the wonky comp and amount of time spent running meant that you ended with a very long fight that could snowball out of control at any point if you didn't keep it on lockdown from pull to kill. Still, if you had the right comp and a reasonable plan going into the fight, it wasn't as demanding for execution as something like pre-nerf Kael'thas, Heroic 25 Rag/Lich King, or Zero Light's Yogg. Spell hit and melee hit were the same state, but different percentages required. The biggest issue was that warriors were the only viable tanks at the time. How many good tanks on your server? How many are basically cutting-edge mythic raiders? How many are warriors? It was a nightmare. On top of just population issues, there was gear. There was no catch-up mechanics. You had to farm every tier before Nax to catch up. Trying to do that to gear up one dude was a hell of a thing. Next we have the fight itself. OG Nax did comparable damage to Wrath Nax. Many bosses did the same amount of damage in spite of massively different HP pools. In Wrath, Lady Blomeau's Void Zone did 3,000 damage every second on people with 20,000 HP. At 60, it was 4,000 damage per second on people with around 4,000 HP. Boss HP was also insane. 2.16 million for the original foursome, 4.825 million for their heroic Wrath counterparts. Now yes, Wrath is much higher, but let's look at how health has scaled over the years. Between Vanilla and Wrath, player HP increased some 500%. Bosses generally doubled. With boss damage staying about the same, it really makes the whole thing quite laughable, especially when you look at player damage. The peak damage from players was between 500 to 1000 DPS in vanilla. It was dark times. With 6 tanks and 8 healers, that leaves you with 26 DPS spots. Splitting the difference with DPS and assuming an average of 750 DPS, it would take you about 2 minutes to kill the bastards at level 60. During TBC, at level 70, you're looking at having 2 tanks, yes, 2 goddamn tanks, each one tanked 2 horsemen, 4 healers and 19 DPS. The average DPS in Wrath was, well, between 1 and 3k. Splitting the difference with 2k, you're looking at the same numbers at 2 minutes kill time, assuming optimal play. But wait. That's assuming optimal play. My god, we even forgot mechanics. With Vanilla Nax, we had the wonder that was 6 tanks swapping at 6 to 7 stacks. And with them good old threat mechanics, that meant slowing the fuck down on DPS. With Horseman marks lasting 75 seconds instead of the Wrath 25, tanking the whole thing was a goddamn nightmare. But wait, it gets worse. The Horsemen also had Shield Wall, which they would each cast at 75 and 25% HP. This would give them 75% damage reduction for 20 seconds, making bursting one down impossible. The whole thing that should have taken 2 minutes instead turned into a marathon of pain and misery. It just gets worse and worse when you also start looking at the toolkits that players had to work with. Want to know a secret of vanilla that everyone likes to forget, like a past trauma that you can't bear to remember? There was no AoE healing outside of your group. Everyone taking massive amounts of damage, and most of the time, all you could do was hot and pray. And cry. Unless you were a shaman. Chain heal master race. Okay, so that was a lot of posts, and obviously including that epic final post. And thank you for your patience as I hammered the other side, suggesting that this fight is the most difficult one ever. Please. You're very, very confused, but I understand that many are. It's not the fight that was difficult. It was the organization. They are distinctly different things that we shouldn't blend. Having the privilege of knowing or recruiting 8 geared decent tanks that could hit up Nax, now that's a challenge. And having most of them not be assholes, an even bigger challenge. I kid, tanks, we love you. Please join our guild. But the other challenge, as mentioned before, was the coordination of 40 people, all coming together to achieve a relatively difficult goal. Heard the term, it's like herding cats? Well, that may help describe a clueless raid taking on the 4 Horsemen. Try managing people. That's the game within the game. For shits and gigs, let's tack on that some of them may be drunk or high. Now that's Mythic plus level management difficulty. Whilst Bill Belichick preaches, do your job, he doesn't have to hammer that point home to someone who just knocked off their 8th free pour Jack and Coke for the night, and who's singing the discography of Sepultura while trying to tank Lady Blamo. But even if we ignore the delicate art of guild management, there's also the actual fight itself, which these posters still say is absolutely not even close to the hardest thing the Encounter team at Blizzard brewed in their Factory of Pain. Oh, you had to divide the raid up and just cross your fingers for a few taunts to land? Well, have you met my friend Yogg Saron? Zero Light's Yogg is definitely something that even me, as a non-raider, was very aware of when you hear that one consistently coming up in conversations as a kick in the proverbial nuts. But I ask you, the listeners, what do you say was the hardest fight in the game to date? And maybe we'll qualify it by saying fights that could A, actually be completed, so pre-nerf Cthulhu and pre-nerf 4 Horsemen is probably out, and B, the actual encounter as opposed to the logistics of the encounter in terms of needing to know or have X amount of a certain role, a la the 4 Horsemen and tanks, is probably out as well. Write into me and yell out in the Discord if you'd like and start up the conversation. I'd love to hear what your suggestions are. We'll move on, and next we have this one from user Dawn Rage, who says this. Coordinating 40 people to handle the 60-yard marks and the abilities of Zeliek and Thane were tough for a 40-man raid. Tank deaths? I don't know how many times that happened to us. That led straight to a wipe most of the time because the guy would beeline straight to the safe zone and reset all the marks, leading to messed up rotations. Taunt resist? There were all sorts of crap that could go wrong there. I was the healer assigned to solo heal the tank at the start on Lady 2, and when a void zone ticks for half of your health as soon as it spawns, and you had no instance at the time as a healer besides Renew, since I played a priest, unlike now, it was a fine balancing act, all while trying to keep the tank and yourself up alone with constant mark damage. There's a reason not many people finished Nax. I think a lot of people forget what it was like playing in vanilla. You don't have the freedom to do all the Superman shit that you can do today with cooldowns and movement, etc. So this user poses an interesting question. Regardless of whether or not you think the 4 Horsemen was the toughest encounter in the game or not, there's no doubt that it was still considered a difficult fight. So which part of the encounter would cause you and your guild to wipe? Obviously, a very small percentage of the player base got there in the actual vanilla days, and only a few more in private servers. But for those of you listening who have been there, what was your bugaboo? Was it the tanks not hitting taunts at a really inopportune time and needing to work on getting that 4-piece set of Dreadnought gear for the added 5% taunt hit chance? Was it people not being able to move out of the void zones in time due to that awful vanilla age lag? Or was it an inability to get enough people around the tank to eat the meteor and help out? The mechanics were definitely there to be juggled. I realize that people, through the eyes of revisionist history, say that the mechanics, perhaps by today's standards, are relatively ho-hum. However, this was obviously very far from a boring tank and spank fight. all players still had to be switched on, and I've no doubt that many of us will struggle to firstly get to Nax when Classic releases, when Nax comes out, that is. And if some of us are lucky enough to see the Four Horsemen, I'm sure many of those raiders outside of the elite veteran guilds will still struggle in this day and age with this particular encounter. Next we hear from well-known content creator Racerisk, who says this. The Four Horsemen fight represents the peak of classic raiding and introduction of more interesting mechanics that requires coordination and mobility, as seen in later versions of WoW. However, did this fight actually expose prominent issues with the vanilla raid system that would lead to what we have today? For example, A. Guilds were completely caught off guard by needing 8 tanks. Could this have influenced the bring the player, not the class model as seen today? And B, Cthulhu and Vanilla Nax pushed the 40-man raiding model to its limits, but could things such as the meme of most vanilla raids having to be carried by the other half pushed Blizzard to go with the 25-player size since their future mechanics would be too complex for 40? Next we have this post from user Swee93. These are from Reddit, by the way, who says this. I want to talk to the person that designed the fight and see if the strategy that came to be used was their actual intention. It just seems so odd that it's designed for people to stand and wait most of the fight. Perhaps this is where shadow resistance gear was supposed to play a bigger part somehow. And finally we have this post from user Zenshigen, who says this. Even Nax mechanics are a joke compared to today's raids. Four Horsemen had several people just standing around for extended periods of time. The tank mechanics were basically, don't get one-shot by random fire proc, and have some people soak on you. And so the final point that we'll touch on from these users is, what did the devs have in mind when they designed this fight? Were 8 tanks planned? Did they want the rest sitting around waiting for something to do at certain points? Well, luckily enough, when I spoke with Alex Brazzi, the former WoW dev who worked on encounter design, I asked him about this, and here's a refresher on what he had to say about the Four Horsemen encounter.
So the original plan was you have the 4 horsemen tanked in the corner, and the 2 tanks will pull both horsemen together, taunt off of each other, and then run back. And what ended up being the problem with that was that these pulsing, stacking AoEs meant you had this super dangerous zone in the middle where people would be stacking both debuffs. And so the popular strategy actually became, have 2 tanks on each side, they swap off halfway through, and then run to the other side to prepare for a taunt. And so, in a world where tanks didn't have to be warriors, that would have worked fine. That would have been great. You'd have a warrior tank and a paladin tank and a druid tank, right? And you just have people basically bring those specs or that gear with them. But at this point in the life cycle of WoW, they hadn't really evolved the paladin and the druid to be effective enough. And pets, there was a moratorium on letting pets tank things in raids ever. It turns out that when you have a warlock who can instantly resummon pets, he will just spawn void walkers over and over again, and put 300 shards in his bag to basically prevent his raid from taking any damage. So a lot of that was a really tough situation where, you hoped, maybe 6 is enough and it's doable, but then players will always choose the path of least resistance, right? They will say, hey, we're going to pick 8. It's easier to coordinate, less damage on the individual tanks, and it means that we can just relax and the DPS has more time to beat the boss. So that always happens. When you try to do a very tightly coordinated fight, it's not going to go the way you thought.
So as you can hear, Blizzard absolutely did not intend this to be an 8-tank fight. However, those tricky, savvy raiders simply got together and said, well, why the fuck can't we just bring more tanks to make this easier? And so they did. And that simply just became the accepted meta for this fight. It was a fight conceived to push a raid hard with fewer tanks, but as we find so-called shortcuts, we take them, happily. But Razorisk actually asked some really great questions in his post, so kudos to him for getting the old brain firing up. Is the Four Horsemen fight patient zero for some of the design changes that we started to see in the expansions in regards to raid encounters? We heard Alex Brazzi say that if paladins and druids were more viable tanks, then obviously the Four Horsemen encounter becomes a different ballgame, which is true to a certain extent. We may still have needed 8 tanks, but maybe just their makeup would be different. Feel free to shout me down if I'm wrong there. But his answer seems to bolster Racerist's thought. Blizzard may well have realized at this point that they needed to open things up to more players. Reducing this fight to somewhat of a need for warriors excluded others. And in later content, we obviously saw Blizzard embrace that ethos of bring the player, not the class. Seeing the way that the player base worked around the mechanics of the Four Horsemen may well have pushed Blizzard to begin the changes. Razorist's other great point is that Blizzard may also have started to realize that 40-man raids were not the way of the future around this point, noticing that some members of the raid could slack off, whether or not this was happening specifically in the Four Horsemen encounter, and that the group's goal could still be achieved. Now, I realize that accessibility was another concern in dropping the raid numbers, and the ease of getting 25 people together was less of a burden than gathering 40, but this could have been another reason for the drop. Why not trim the raid fat? If there are people coasting along like it's weekend at Bernie's, then just change things up so that it's at a number where you can't really afford to have a few people taking a holiday. So I thought those were some interesting takes and a nice little look at how the players will see Blizzard's planned strategies and raise them a handful of tanks. Hi everyone! Did you know that the vast majority of callers that you hear on Countdown to Classic are residents of the Countdown to Classic Discord? Please do come and check us out. Outside of that, if you want to hear more from me, then follow me on Twitter at Counts2Classic with the number 2. I've also started streaming regularly, and you can find me on Twitch at Countdown to Classic. So please do come hang out and have some fun over there. If you want to call into the show, give feedback, or submit a memory lane or anger management of your own, then email me at feedback@countdowntoclassic.com. Now, let's get back to the show. And now with Forum and Fauna out of the way, now it's time for a long overdue anger management. In anger management, we go through some of the listeners' angriest posts about vanilla World of Warcraft, and today we've just got 2 to get through, but there is a long one in there, but we'll get through the short one first, and this one is from listener Would-Be Nerd, who tells us this. Here's an anger management for you. Short, but still terrible. I got married 4 months ago. Yay me! Never thought that could happen, but I digress. I was itching to finally get an uninterrupted afternoon of WoW Classic in after my wife got on a plane to Hong Kong. It's not that she doesn't let me play, it's just that I feel guilty when I do for long stretches of time, and she tends to talk through it with no regard if I might be busy or not. So I drop her off at the station and I hurry back home, cause, you know, it's WoW. A whole day of uninterrupted, pure WoW. I even got the Dr. Pepper and everything stocked up in the fridge and everything was good to go. So I log on to WoW and select my character, and as the world loads, everything in the house goes quiet and dark. No lights, no computer, no power. After much running around the apartment and checking all the fuse boxes, it turns out the outage is street-wide and fixing it would take most of the day. Curse you, cruel world! In the end, I ended up going swimming out of sheer bloody misery and boredom, and in the evening the power went out again, so I ended up watching whatever I had in movies on my old iPad, which wasn't awful when combined with the right amount of whiskey. It just wasn't what I had in mind for that particular day. Fuck you, Sod's Law. And next we've got this long one from listener Andrew L, who tells us this. I have continuously seen posts on the forums from long-time private server players saying that they are the reason that WoW Classic is happening because they campaigned and fought for it for 7+ years. Sometimes they go on to say that people who weren't involved in this, or retail players, shouldn't fucking be allowed to have opinions on the development of WoW Classic. This is complete bullshit for one simple fact. While all of you were campaigning and fighting Blizzard, the folks that stayed with them through the rough times and continued to support the company financially are why they are in the position today to recreate this game. If Blizzard didn't get as big as they have become, you wouldn't be getting your precious. As much as you non-retail players might not like to hear it, retail players have a big part in why this game is happening. Arguably, just as much as some of the elitist dicks that fought in the trenches for this game to happen. We all want this game, so stop acting entitled. That shit won't fly when the game gets released if you want to live in an environment that depends on social interaction. And I lied actually, we've got a third anger management post. I thought it was only 2, but it's 3. So here we go. And this one is from Countdown to Classic All-Star, Minoru, who tells us this. The Dark Portal is one of the most important and recognizable lore pieces in Warcraft. It's the whole reason we have Warcraft in the first place. Without the Dark Portal, the Horde would never have come to Azeroth, and the Alliance would never have been created in response. The stories of Warcraft 1 and 2 revolve around the Dark Portal. It's very, very important. Yet, in the WoW Diary, John Statz admits that Blizzard had no idea where to put it in World of Warcraft. Really? How? It has an explicit location in lore. It was formed in the Black Morass in the Eastern Kingdoms. Yet Chris Metzen first decided to put the Dark Portal on Teldrassil. Teldrassil! The Night Elf World Tree! Even though Night Elves weren't part of the lore when the Dark Portal was created. So let's humour that. The Dark Portal opens, the Orcs invaded, ignored the Night Elves, swam across the ocean, past the Maelstrom, then attacked the humans, and that's how the first war started. That's how Warcraft 1 happened, right? Right. So they decided Teldrassil was a bad area. They moved it to be half buried underwater in Azshara, slightly closer but still not correct. It should be noted that screenshots of this underwater Azshara Dark Portal started long-standing rumours of where the possible entrance to the unused Azshara crater battleground would be, or at least a test entrance to something. Why would people think that? Well, that's because in early World of Warcraft, Blizzard used the model for the Dark Portal as a temporary placeholder for instance portals, so the entrance to Scholomance and the like would also be the Dark Portal. It stands to reason that people thought that this underwater Azshara Dark Portal was just another instance portal. Nope, it was just a misguided location for the real Dark Portal, the one from the actual lore. Yet again on Kalimdor for some reason, a continent that didn't exist in the first 2 games of the series. So after further deliberation, they finally put it in the Blasted Lands in the Eastern Kingdoms. Why? Because apparently it was a boring zone and they wanted to put something interesting there. Seriously? I mean, fair enough, Blasted Lands was quite boring at the time. Take out the Dark Portal and there isn't anything there, really. Lord Kazakh wasn't there, he didn't exist at release. But really? That was the reason that the Blasted Lands was so boring? They lucked out on that placement by sheer chance, apparently because the Dark Portal ended up reasonably close to where it should be in the lore. Look, it's not a coincidence that the opening of the Dark Portal instance in the Caverns of Time looks like the Swamp of Sorrows. The Warcraft 1 manual describes that the Dark Portal made the land around it more sick and swamp-like. They messed up when they placed the Dark Portal in the Blasted Lands, but because they lucked out with the Swamp of Sorrows being right next door, they retconned it by saying it sucked the life out of the land and dried the swamp out instead. I respect Chris Metzen, but he very nearly dropped the ball on placing the single most important lore piece of the entire series. It's unbelievable. And with all that anger out of the way, now it's time for Memory Lane. In Memory Lane, we hear some of the stories from the Countdown to Classic listeners about their fondest or funniest memories from vanilla World of Warcraft. And we'll begin this week with listener Hoodie, who tells us this. I wanted to share a short story from one of my most memorable moments back in vanilla. I didn't get too high level or too in depth when vanilla was out due to being very young and also playing a lot of other games that were out at the time, like Halo. But both my friend that I got into the game with and I made it to the 40s before Burning Crusade came out. This is the thing I remember the most from those days in vanilla. I was farming South Sea pirates out on the coast of Tanaris when my friend told me he'd actually gotten his first mount. I just couldn't fathom how he was able to afford it before me, considering I'd started the game quite a bit before him and was a higher level. I'd purchased the mount portion due to it being cheaper than the riding skill and was slowly climbing that hill to buying the riding skill, but he had already obtained both in no time at all? His secret? The guild he had recently joined funded his superior mount. You can imagine my envy and jealousy. I weaseled my way into the guild with the high hopes that they would fund my mount purchase too. But alas, it wasn't until much later when I finally got my own first mount, the hard way, from grinding. We were both gnomes, so you bet I thought it was badass that he had one of those fascinating mechanostriders to show off and worked hard to get my own. Next we have this one from listener Remorse, or alias Skizzy, who says this. I've got a short submission. It was relevant in vanilla too, but much more so now in current WoW. Whenever I play PvP, whether it's World PvP, Arena, or Battlegrounds, I more often than not end up seething with rage from a very simple thing. Immunity spells. Hi, I'm a paladin. I see you are about to kill me. No worries, I'll just press my bubble and heal to full again. Or, hello, I am a mage. I see you are killing me. I'll just chill in this thick block of ice for ages and get my CCs and escapes off cooldown. And one that's more relevant to current WoW. Hi, I am a hunter. I have my turtle blanket. Basically aspect of the turtle or whatever the spell is called. So yeah, just die. Thanks. Next we have this one from listener Fugors, who says this. Back in the vanilla days, I was probably 12 to 13 and was mainly playing with my best friend, who was later the best man at my wedding just a few months back. We both liked PvP, especially World PvP, but Battlegrounds are a must for ranking. Eventually, we decided to get into raiding and had to find a guild that 1, needed both of us, and 2, raided late enough for our parents to be asleep so we didn't get caught playing until 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning on school nights. Both were easy for me as I was a shadow priest who didn't mind respecing Holy to get my foot in the door with raiding, and I had a computer in my room. My friend, on the other hand, was a rogue, and DPS wasn't in as high demand, and his computer was in a different room, so it was more difficult for him to sneak around, ironically, to log on to be ready for raid invites. The only guild we could find raided roughly the same time his parents went to sleep, so it was tricky to time it right. Usually, he would log on 30 minutes early, get the invite to the raid, turn off his monitor, and wait for my text that the raid was about to move out. I remember countless times having to come up with excuses for him in the raid, like, there's a big storm in our area and his internet went out. He's rebooting his router now. Because we didn't want to let slip that I'm a kid and my parents are mad at me because it's a school night. It always worked out and never seemed to be an issue for us. One night, however, they stayed up later than usual and the raid replaced him for the night. I got to school the next day and he asked how the raid went. That night was the first time we cleared Molten Core, and you never forget your first. And the night I got my quest item for the Benediction staff. I re-rolled immediately back to Shadow and was a Shadow Priest raider and never looked back. After about an hour of trying to convince him I was telling the truth, he flipped out. Him and I ended up raiding together through vanilla up to BC and have since moved to different states, but we still play WoW together. We played on Nost and raided there before the shutdown, and now we just do random game nights on private servers to stay connected every couple of weeks. Next we have this one from listener Caps Lock LOL, who says this. World of Warcraft exceeded expectations in my first hour of gameplay. This was 1 week post-release and I just got a computer, a garbage compact PC that could barely play the game on low settings. I was in the Valley of Trials. I was exploring and found that little path that gives you the gorgeous view of Ratchet. Like an idiot, I fell off the cliff but somehow survived. I swam up to this fascinating city that even had Alliance players there. In that moment, the world felt so huge. What was this place? Why were there Alliance players here? The noob that I was, I set my Hearthstone to the Ratchet Inn, not knowing what that did. I asked how to get back to the Valley of Trials and people said, just use your Hearthstone. Oops. So I had to walk all the way back. But since I was so new, it didn't feel like a chore. It felt like this incredible feat of exploration, running away from and often dying to higher level mobs, seeing all varieties of players. It made me feel like my character existed in an actual world and not just a game lobby. I was hooked for a while after that. I even got up early to play for a few hours before school. And next we have another one from Remorse, alias Skizzy, who says this. I've got 2 even shorter submissions. This one is really only relevant to current WoW, but for the love of God and all that is holy, why are demon hunters allowed to double jump and glide in PvP? And this one is a very minor, tiny irritation lore-wise about Tyrande. When and why did Tyrande dye her hair? In all the books I've read, she's been described having dark blue or purple or even close to black hair sometimes. But in the game, and even since vanilla, I do believe she's had green hair. I know it's really minor, but it bothers me. Then again, having been alive for over 10,000 years, yeah, I could see myself wanting to change some things too. And finally, we have this one from listener Vashet, who tells us this. So, this is going to be a bit of a weird one, but it's the honest truth. I took an extended hiatus from the game at the start of Kata and decided to come back towards the end of MOP. When I tried to log on again, my account was locked. I was living overseas at the time, so I was able to prove it wasn't me who violated the terms of service. When I got back into the account, I honest to God had around 80 Reigns of the Crimson Death Charger, 2 epic and 2 rare spectral tiger mounts. Using the going rate of item selling sites, I figured the total value of the items was around $5,000 to $10,000. Of course, I was tempted to sell the items for real-world currency, but I knew there was no way I'd ever get away with it, and the risk of losing it all just seemed too great. So I've been slowly selling them for gold and giving them away until I ran out towards the end of Legion. Needless to say, I haven't needed gold in a long time. And that's it for Memory Lane. I've got plenty more Memory Lane submissions coming, so please don't stress if you haven't heard yours read out yet. We'll definitely get to them all eventually, but that's it for today, everyone. Please do stay tuned next week for a great talk all about Molten Core, and maybe some mounts and more lore and Memory Lane stories if we have the time. Just before I let you go, it's time for some thank yous, and a big thank you as always to patrons Connor C, Damien A, David F, Eric L, Hurlbert, John HC, Jamie S, Michael H, Minoru, Nick S, Oscar T, Randall H, Rarebit, Rick S, Tim B, Tim S, Voikora, and Zudamos. And of course, the very dedicated patrons of Countdown to Classic. An extra special shout out and thank you from the bottom of my heart to the following $20 a month patrons: Billy C, Firespit and Kitten, Flosy B, Carl W, Nick B, Palfurus, Romani, Tsunami, The Anton, Wilson Ma, and Velarco. Thank you so much to all of you for your phenomenal support of the show. Countdown to Classic would not be the same without the contributions that you make. But that's it for today. Have a great weekend, everyone. I can't wait to see you all next time.